Chapter 2906. By the Moonlight Lake. Go back and tell those old fellows that I'll talk to them about the lives and deaths of these divine sons and daughters when I leave. Lin Sun turned around and left. The cultivators of the various divine clans who had been ordered to come felt relieved. They had all come with a mentality of certain death. Fortunately, Lin Sun didn't pay attention to these small fries. Soon, Lin Sun's reply spread throughout the city and reached the ears of the old fogies in the depths of the starry sky outside the city. That kid is smart. One of the old fogies snorted. If Lin Sun were to bargain now, it would be a good thing for these old fogies. At the very least, they could talk about conditions and even promise some bait to lure Lin Sun out. But it was obvious that Lin Sun didn't intend to talk now. No matter how smart a person is, he won't want me trapped here forever, said another. Another person said, this kid's reply has already revealed that he intends to leave Fortune City. Secondly, the godsons and goddesses of our various races are still alive. All this means that Lin Sun sees them as hostages and plans to talk to us when he leaves Fortune City. The old fogie's eyes flickered. They naturally understood this. Everyone, what do you think you should choose between killing Lin Sun and saving the divine sons? Someone asked softly. The depths of the starry sky fell silent. When the time comes, we'll choose an opportunity to kill Lin Sun and save the divine sons. Someone said in a hoarse voice. What if we can only choose one? This question made the starry sky fall silent again. Why do we have to choose? The eternal coffin must be left behind. What's more, how can a small fry like Lin Sun kill those divine sons and daughters under our noses? Someone said coldly. But what if the lives of those divine sons and daughters are in danger? How can there be no bloodshed in such a matter? If the divine sons are gone, they can be cultivated again. But if the eternal coffin is gone, there won't be another chance. No, the divine sons of our clans can't die like this. We'd rather give up the eternal coffin. For a moment, the old fogies in the depths of the starry sky started arguing. For a long time, they failed to form a unified opinion, so that each of them was so angry that they gnashed their teeth at Lin Sun. Although they had besieged the city for 6 years, they hadn't gained any advantage. Instead, the divine sons and goddesses of their respective clans had all been captured in one fell swoop. How could they possibly be happy about this? Lin Sun didn't care what those old fogies outside the city would decide. He had never placed all his hopes of leaving the Fortune Divine City on hostages. Right now, there was only one thing he needed to solve. That was the origin of summer solstice. West of the city, lonely Night Ridge. Lin Sun paid his respects to 13 again. 13 wasn't surprised by Lin Sun's arrival, and he said, you don't have to tell me if the secrets within the Fortune Star are extremely private. Lin Sun said, it's not a secret, but I'm not sure whether this secret is the answer your master was looking for. As he spoke, he described all the scenes he'd witnessed when he saw through the profundities of the Star of Creation. After listening, 13 said, I understand. What my master was looking for that year should be the power to resolve that catastrophe. And that supreme figure surnamed Chun has mastered the method to resolve this catastrophe. He seemed very excited. Lin Sun said, I also guess so. 13 looked at Lin Sun with his eyes. Since you've mastered the power of the Fortune Divine City, can you know where that supreme figure went? Lin Sun shook his head. But you have a jade pendant surnamed Chun on you. 13 looked at the fiery red jade pendant hanging around Lin Sun's waist. Lin Sun said, this is a gift from a senior. It should be related to that supreme figure. But I didn't know that the supreme figure was also surnamed Chun. 13 was obviously unwilling. Apart from this, there's no other harvest? Lin Sun said, I'd also like to ask Senior, how much do you know about your master's origin? 13 was silent for a while and said, when I was young, I was just a lonely vagrant. I was almost beaten to death by other beggars because I snatched food from others when I was begging. It was my master who passed by and saved me. She said that the reason why she saved me was that even though I was about to be beaten to death, I didn't beg for mercy, nor did I blame others. In this regard, I was somewhat similar to her. It was also from then on that I followed the Lord. She said that she had never accepted disciples in her life and only saved some people who caught her eye. I was the 13th person she saved. So, she named me 13. My master never talked to me about her past, but I knew that she was very powerful, so powerful that she could make the gods bow their heads and make the world surrender. Speaking of this, there was a touch of fanaticism in his eyes. The world of gods is known as the first world of the divine ruins of creation. There are 3 supreme gods in it, but no one dared to provoke her during the years when my master walked in this world. Later, as my cultivation deepened, I felt that my master's strength was unfathomable. She didn't seem to belong to the divine ruins of creation. Instead, she was like a passerby, always looking for something and never caring about the disputes of the world. I remember that the Lord once asked me if I would be willing to leave the divine ruins of creation with her, if she were to leave one day. Of course I would, and I asked her where she would go if she left the divine ruins of creation. My master said 13 was silent. What did she say? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. 13 took a deep breath and said, my master said that she would come out of the darkness and find a ray of light to reside in, to be a person who has a home to return to. Lin Sun was shocked, thinking of what Xia Ji had said to him in the past. She said that her world was dark, and after meeting him, there was light in her world. A home to return to. 13's eyes were red, and his voice was hoarse. At that time, I realized that my master was like me. She used to be a homeless person. Even if she had supreme power, it was inevitable that she would be lonely, like walking in the darkness. Lin Sun couldn't calm his heart. Homeless. How powerful was her original body? Was she just looking for a home to return to? After a long time, Lin Sun finally made a decision. He took a deep breath, looked at 13, and said, Senior, I think I can give you an answer. 13's body trembled, and he said, You should have found a way to revive my master, right? Lin Sun nodded. He didn't say anything more and took out the abyssal sword cauldron. Accompanied by a rain of light, Xia Ji's slender figure appeared in front of 13. My lord! 13's cold expression changed completely, and he knelt on the ground as if he had lost control. My lord, you have already woken up. His tone was faintly choked with sobs. Lin Sun? Xia Ji's eyes were full of doubts. This senior is related to your life. You really don't recognize him? Lin Sun asked softly. Xia Ji stared at 13 and said, I don't know him. 13, who knelt on the ground, said in a hoarse voice, My lord, I know you have woken up from silence. It doesn't matter whether you remember me or not. Senior, she is not your master. Lin Sun calmed down and said, In other words, Xia Ji is your master's life spirit, and only she can wake up your master. Xia Ji was stunned. Life spirit. Lin Sun gently grabbed Xia Ji's white hand and said softly, Xia Ji, I often ask you about your life and experience in the past. Even you didn't know it yourself. But now, I have already inquired about some news. Xia Ji's reaction was very calm. She said, Lin Sun, these are not important. It's fine as long as you are here. Lin Sun felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. He opened his mouth with difficulty and said, Don't worry, I will always be with you. But you should know your past, what kind of person you were and where you came from. Xia Ji looked up at Lin Sun and said, I will listen to you. One sentence, for words. But it made Lin Sun's chest feel heavy, as if he was unable to breathe. This was an unconditional trust. Xia Ji had said it many times in the past, but this time, it made Lin Sun's heart suffer. He was really afraid that Xia Ji would awaken her previous memory and become a completely different person. This also meant that he was very likely to lose Xia Ji. My little friend. 13 suddenly spoke in a low and hoarse voice. Can you listen to me? Senior, please go ahead. Lin Sun said. Do you still remember the words written by His Majesty before entering the eternal coffin? Cut off this body's past and never suffer in the darkness again. Speaking of this, 13's chest heaved up and down. He seemed to be unable to control his emotions, and I know that His Majesty's greatest wish is to go out of the darkness and find a ray of light. So, He suddenly looked up at Lin Sun and was about to say something. Lin Sun interrupted him. No. 13 was stunned. Lin Sun was silent for a long time and said, "If I don't let Xia Ji know about this, I am afraid that I will feel uneasy for the rest of my life." Then, he turned to Xia Ji and told her everything. Xia Ji looked very calm after hearing it. Her voice was as clear as the sound of nature. "If I was really the eternal Night Emperor, Lin Sun, would you not want me?" Lin Sun said without thinking, "Of course not. I won't either." Xia Ji answered even faster, as if such a decision was a matter of course for her. Lin Sun said softly, "Xia Ji, when the power of the shackles of fate in your body disappears, you should be able to restore your past memory from your original body. By then, why should we wait for such a big event related to our fate?" Suddenly, a clear and unrestrained voice rang out. Soon after, a dignified and imposing figure walked into the palace. He was elegant and graceful like an immortal. Here comes the latest update. Chapter 2907. The newcomer wore a jade robe, and his figure was tall and straight like a pine tree. His every movement was like that of an immortal. Lin Sun and 13 were shocked. But when they saw the newcomer's appearance, Lin Sun was stunned, and his eyes lit up. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior." The newcomer was Chun Linkong, the strange man who called himself Burning Immortal. Chun Linkong smiled, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Then he looked at Xia Ji and said, "Miss, we meet again." Xia Ji nodded slightly. "Senior, this is Senior Chun Linkong." Lin Sun introduced Chun Linkong to 13. 13 said, "Your surname is Chun. Could it be that you are related to that supreme figure?" Chun Linkong smiled and nodded. "It's my grandfather." Lin Sun's heart shook. He recalled that Tai Xian had once said that the word Chun on the red jade pendant hanging on his waist was left behind by Chun Linkong's grandfather. According to Tai Xian's deduction, Chun Linkong's grandfather was an extremely incredible existence. Thinking about it, it made sense. How could someone who was unafraid of the shackles of time and space, and even built Divine City of Fortune and Star Vault of Fortune here, be an ordinary person? 13 couldn't help but say excitedly, "So you should know about the great calamity my lord encountered back then?" Chun Linkong said that great tribulation was similar to the 5 Blight Tao tribulation, and it came from the mastermind behind the epic transition. However, it targeted existences at the eternal realm. It should be called the Great Silence Lifeless Tribulation. Great Silence Calamity. It was the first time Lin Sun and 13 knew that there was such an unimaginable and strange calamity besides the 5 Blight Tribulation. Moreover, it came from the mastermind behind the change of an era. Senior, who is the mastermind behind the scenes? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Chun Linkong smiled. "Aren't you going to invite me to sit down and have a chat?" Only now did Lin Sun realize that he hadn't invited Chun Linkong to sit down since he appeared, so he hurriedly acted. After everyone took their seats, Chun Linkong said, "I've been roaming the ruins of creation since a very long time ago. Up until now, I've roughly confirmed some things. Amongst them, the most important is the mastermind behind the scenes." He paused for a moment and said, "I'm sure all of you are clearly aware that there are over 100 eras in the ruins of creation, but every single one of them is trapped here and unable to leave. The reason is that all living beings in these eras are obstructed by an invisible energy of the laws, and even formidable eternal realm experts are unable to break through this obstruction. To put it simply, this shapeless energy of the laws is like a cage that has trapped the living beings of over 100 eras. Even if one attains the Tao and attains eternity in this lifetime, it's absolutely impossible for one to leave. At the beginning, I thought that the invisible energy of the laws had come from the ruins of creation. Only now did I realize that the invisible energy of the laws had come from the mastermind behind the scenes during the change of an era." Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling terrified and asked, "Why did the mastermind do this?" Chun Linkong said, "I don't know about that, but I'm sure that my grandfather came here for the sake of looking for the mastermind behind the scenes. But in the end, he probably noticed that the mastermind isn't in the ruins of creation. Where would it be? Lin Sun asked. Chun Linkong was silent for a moment before he said, in my opinion, among the four great Tao ruins, the ultimate ruin is the source of all the Taos in the world, and it is also the path to return. Even if it is as powerful as the eternal true world right now, if we trace the source of the power of the great Tao that covers it, we can still trace it back to the ruins of End. The Kunlun ruins is the main battlefield of every era. Every time the era is destroyed, countless people will fight for survival in the Kunlun ruins. As for the ruins of creation, it is a prison left behind by the mastermind. As for why it imprisoned the civilizations of over 100 eras here, even I don't know. It was the first time for Lin to hear such a shocking secret, and he couldn't help being shocked. The ruins of End was the source of all Taos in the world. The Kunlun ruins, the main battlefield of the change of eras. The mastermind of the ruins of creation had transformed this place into a prison. This was simply shocking. What about the ruins of profundity? Lin Sun calmed himself down and asked. Chun Linkong said, the door of profundity is mysterious within mysteries. I'm not sure about that place either, but I'll definitely have to go there in the future. Lin Sun was stunned. He recalled the Tao flame and the Taoist riding an ox painting he had obtained, and he also recalled that the owners of the two sharpening stones, Sharpening Heart and Nurturing Heart, had once entered the ruins of profundity of Tao. However, no one could give a reason for the ruins of profundity of Tao. Amongst the four great Tao ruins, the ruins of profundity of Tao was the most mysterious. In short, no matter who the mastermind is, no matter if he's formed from a strand of rule energy or an extremely terrifying cultivator, I'll definitely find out his true identity. Chun Linkong spoke softly with a resolute expression in his eyes. Fellow Taoist, let's not talk about the mastermind and the change of eras for now. May I be so bold as to ask if you've mastered the method to resolve the great silent fatality tribulation? 13, who had been silent all this time, couldn't help but ask. Chun Linkong said, the method is hidden in the divine city of fortune. What? 13 felt as if he was struck by lightning. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. Chun Linkong said, my young friend, you've already comprehended the mystery of the Star of Fortune, so you should already know the purpose of building the divine city of fortune, to protect the origin of fortune from being destroyed. Lin Sun said without hesitation. That's right. The reason the mastermind hasn't taken complete control of the ruins of creation is because the creation quintessence still exists. The energy of the creation quintessence is sufficient to resist the great silence lifespan tribulation from the mastermind. Chun Linkong said, my grandfather was aware of this, so he established the divine city of fortune with all his cultivation. The rule energy of the treasure river diagram shrouded and protected this place, so that the origin of fortune here could avoid the control of the mastermind for countless years. The treasure river diagram. Lin Sun suddenly recalled that after the green-clothed man surnamed Chun built the divine city of fortune, he'd taken out a black and round tortoise shell and tossed it into the sky. It transformed into a forbidden rule energy that covered the entire divine city of fortune. So it turned out that all of this was for the sake of resisting the power of the mastermind and protecting the origin of fortune. It was no wonder that for countless years, even eternal realm experts would be repelled and attacked when they tried to approach the divine city of fortune. Even the rule energy formed by the treasure river diagram could resist the power of the mastermind. So how could it be unable to resist eternal realm experts? In this way, if my lord had arrived at the divine city of fortune all those years ago, then it's very likely that he would have been able to avoid that calamity. 13's expression changed indeterminately, and he was filled with sorrow. Chun Linkong nodded. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh in his heart. At that time, Xie Ji's main body had clearly found some clues and intended to come to the divine city of fortune. But she just so happened to encounter a calamity on the way here, and it could be said to have failed at the last moment. After a short while, Lin Sun realized something, and he said, Senior's grandfather once formed the Star of Fortune here. Why? Chun Linkong smiled. You've become a master of the divine city of fortune now, yet you still don't know its secrets? Lin Sun was confused, and he shook his head and said, Please enlighten me, Senior. The civilizations of over 100 epochs have all survived the destruction of each epoch. They represent different cultivation civilizations and cultivation systems. Once you've grasped them one by one, you'll be able to know the heights that the civilizations of each epoch have attained on the path of the Grand Tao. Chun Linkong said, Only by understanding all of this will you be able to understand exactly how formidable the Great Tao at the peak of an era is. In this way, you'll be able to truly understand how formidable the power of the mastermind behind the scenes is. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. Exactly how formidable were the Great Tao of the past civilizations? Lin Sun didn't know. He only knew that no matter how formidable these civilizations were, they couldn't resist the power of the mastermind behind the scenes. Then, if he could understand the strongest power of the civilizations of the past eras, he could speculate how terrifying the power of the mastermind behind the scenes was. In this way, he might have a chance to catch up with, surpass, and defeat the mastermind. And this was the reason why Chun Linkong's ancestor created the Star of Fortune. Although these are still a little far for you now, Chun Linkong said with a smile. Chun Linkong smiled and said, But all of that isn't important. What's important is that you're the first person in the countless years of the past to see through the profundities of the star sky of creation. In the future, the Grand Tao you take will definitely fuse with the strengths of the past eras and stand above the past and present. Anyone who has the potential to walk on this road can be regarded as the same Tao of my grandfather. In the end, Chun Linkong also sighed with emotion. Even he didn't expect that the successor of Fong Siyuan, who had been valued by Golden Cicada, could have such potential on the road of Tao. And Lin Sun remembered the words of the man in green surnamed Chun. I'm not the only one on this road. Chun Linkong said in a low voice, My grandfather always plans before he acts, and he takes every possibility into account. I think he must have a deep meaning since he made such an arrangement at that time. Perhaps you'll be clearer about the meaning of becoming the master of the divine city of fortune after you attain the eternal Tao in the future. Lin Sun hesitated again and again, but he still couldn't help but ask, Senior, can you tell me your grandfather's name? In his mind, the man in green robe with an ancient sword on his back was really incredible. The more he learned about the things related to the divine city of fortune, the more he found how terrifying the man's cultivation was. Think about it. A man who could resolve the great silence fatality tribulation, build the divine city of fortune, and fight against the mastermind behind the scenes in the change of era. What kind of person was he? How could Lin Sun not be curious? Chun Linkong pondered for a moment before he took a deep breath and said, Of course I can, but I can't tell anyone, so I can only tell you. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel that it was inconceivable. It's only a name, yet it's actually related to the Tao. It was also at this moment that he recalled his master, the master of Fong Siyuan. Those senior brothers and senior sisters of his had once said that his master's name was like the Grand Tao, and it couldn't be described with words. At this moment, Chun Linkong's expression revealed a rare, solemn expression, and he cupped his hands towards the sky as if he was a junior bowing to a senior. After that, a Tao voice that resounded like a bell suddenly resounded in Lin Sun's heart. Chunshi, P.S. Before 8:30 p.m. Chapter 2908. It was just 2 words, but Lin Sun's mind trembled like the Great Way. Every time Lin Sun muttered Chun-Shi's name in his heart, he had an indescribable feeling as if he was looking at the Great Way and listening to the Tao. This was simply unimaginable. Even his name was related to the mystery of the Great Way. What realm did he have to reach to possess such power? Senior, how powerful is your grandfather? Lin Sun asked subconsciously. I don't know. Chun Linkong shook his head. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then he said, Perhaps I'll understand when I can fight against the culprit behind the change of era. Chun Linkong said with a smile, Of course. After a pause, he said, "Let's talk about the divine city of fortune. In the final analysis, it can be regarded as a refuge for those powerful figures who might encounter the Great Silence disaster." Qin Ling Kong said, "As long as you arrive near the city before you encounter the disaster, you could be protected by the power released by the river diagram, and you won't have to fear the threat of the Great Silence disaster. It's easy to resolve the disaster. As long as you get the approval of the city lord, you can enter the city, comprehend the power of the origin of creation, and use the power of the origin of creation to resist the disaster." One was to avoid the disaster. The other was to resolve the disaster. There was an essential difference between the two. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that the way to resolve the disaster required the approval of the city lord to be realized one by one. "Senior, doesn't this mean that I'm in control of this power now?" Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Qin Ling Kong smiled with deep meaning and said, "It's exactly like that. In other words, no matter which great figure it is in the future, if they want to deal with the lifeless tribulation of grand silence, then they must first obtain your acknowledgement before they can enter the city. Only in this way would they have the opportunity to comprehend the quintessence of creation." Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. How could he not know how great this power was? After talking for a while, Chun Ling Kong suddenly said, "If you've really made up your mind, you can take out the eternal coffin now." Lin Sun looked at Xia Ji and said, "No matter what you experience later, remember that I'm always by your side." Xia Ji nodded. Compared with Lin Sun, she was like an outsider who didn't care about these things at all. 13 was unusually nervous. "Buzz." Lin Sun didn't waste any time. A wisp of cyan light was released from between his eyebrows, which then turned into a bronze coffin in the void, exuding an ancient and boundless aura. Chun Ling Kong sized it up and said softly, "According to what my grandfather said, the eternal coffin should be called the boat of eternity. When in it, there is no calamity or tribulation. It is like arriving at the other shore, eternal and indestructible. The Ark of Eternity." Lin Sun reached out and pressed on the star map symbol in the center of the coffin lid, which was the symbol of the heaven accessing place. Accompanied by a muffled sound, the lid of the coffin was pushed open a little. Then, the strange and terrible sense of fatal danger came to Lin Sun's mind again, making him stiff all over. At the same time, Xia Ji let out a muffled groan and grasped Lin's left hand subconsciously. There was a touch of panic and confusion on her beautiful and fair face. Chun Ling Kong flicked his sleeve, causing a profound energy of the laws of taboo to surge into appearance, and it silently suppressed the strange and dangerous aura that suffused the eternal coffin. Lin took a deep breath and pushed the lid of the coffin with his right hand. Suddenly, the scene in the coffin was reflected. In the endless darkness, a slender figure was floating. She was dressed in an ancient black robe and wore a black crown on her head. Her hands were crossed on her abdomen, and in her slender and fair right hand, she was holding a scepter that seemed to be made of black jade. The scepter was filled with obscure mist, which covered her whole figure. Even so, her eyes could be vaguely seen closed, and her beautiful face, which was enough to make heaven and earth dim, was quiet and serene. She really looked like Xia Ji, which didn't seem to belong to this world. 13's pupils dilated little by little, and in the end he seemed to be out of control, uttering a low and sorrowful voice. "My lord, my lord." This was the lord he was most familiar with, like a god in heaven, mysterious and supreme. The crown of fate, the staff of karma, the jade of time. Chun Ling Kong's eyes glowed with extraordinary splendor. It's just as the legend said. He seemed to have learned a lot about the past events related to the Eternal Night Emperor. "Lin Sun, why is she the same as me?" Xia Ji looked at the person in the coffin with her clear eyes and frowned slightly. She held Lin Sun's right hand tightly, but other than that, there was nothing unusual. This was because the aura emitted from the coffin had been suppressed by the rule power used by Chun Ling Kong. She is you. You are her." Lin Sun's voice was low, and it seemed a little difficult. He didn't know if this decision was right, but if he didn't do it, he would definitely not be at ease for the rest of his life. The two of you please step back. Leave the rest to me. Chen Linkong glanced at Lin Sun and 13. The two immediately stepped back. Xie Ji didn't want to let go of Lin Sun's hand, but she still listened to Lin Sun's arrangement and quietly stood in front of the eternal coffin. She would never refuse Lin Sun, no matter what. Don't worry, I will always be here, Lin Sun said softly. Xie Ji nodded. Chen Linkong stretched out his hand and formed a seal with his fingers. Buzz. Wisps of obscure Taoist light tangled together and intersected with each other, forming a mysterious picture. It seemed as if it was burning, releasing a magnificent rain of light that engulfed Xie Ji's figure. Xie Ji's slender body trembled, and an unconcealable pain appeared on her face. Lin Sun's heart clenched, and he almost rushed over uncontrollably. Chen Linkong said, "This is removing the shackles of fate in her body. Don't be nervous." Even so, Lin Sun subconsciously clenched his fists. He looked at 13, who was also extremely nervous. How could this be? Before long, Chen Linkong exclaimed in surprise. "Senior, what's wrong?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. This lady's rule of fate seems to have gone through a nirvanic transformation. It's completely different from before. Chen Linkong frowned slightly. A long time ago, he had seen Xie Ji and sensed the power of the shackles of fate in her body. But now it was completely different. Indeed so. Lin Sun suddenly remembered that after he entered the eternal world, he had placed the heavily injured Xie Ji in the abyssal sword cauldron to recuperate. It was also at that time that Xie Ji had been nourished by the power of the Nirvanic Order. Over the years, with the help of the Nirvanic Order, not only had Xie Ji's injuries healed, the shackles of fate in her body had also undergone a brand new rebirth and reconstruction. Interesting. In this way, it's not a bad thing. Chen Linkong's eyes were clear. As he spoke, he kept forming seals with his hands. Obscure and mysterious Tao diagrams appeared, and they turned into a rain of light that surged into Xie Ji's body. Gradually, Xie Ji's figure became blurry and illusory. This made Lin Sun nervous, and he was afraid that Xie Ji would disappear. In the end, Chen Linkong suddenly swung his arm and removed the power of the rule that had been pressing down on the eternal coffin. Boom! At that instant, the entire eternal coffin trembled violently, as if it had woken up from a deep slumber after being separated for eons. At the same time, Xie Ji, whose figure had become blurry and illusory, turned into a ray of white light and shot into the eternal coffin. Lin Sun's heart was about to go out of control at this moment, and his mind was in a mess. If Xie Ji recovered her past memories, would she become a completely different person? The suffocating feeling made Lin Sun clench his teeth to restrain the unprecedented anxiety and uneasiness in his heart. In the eternal coffin, the darkness rolled and surged violently like a tide. The scene that was happening in it was completely drowned by the endless darkness, so Lin Sun couldn't see anything even with all his strength. Chen Linkong inadvertently looked back and saw Lin Sun's anxious look that was about to lose control. He couldn't help feeling touched. He said softly, "My young friend, don't worry. You and this girl are bound by cause and effect, and your fate is interdependent. Nothing bad will happen to you." Lin Sun said bitterly, "Only at this moment do I realize how irreplaceable she is to me. In the past, I let her down too much." Chen Linkong smiled and said, "It's not too late to realize it now." As he was speaking, in the eternal coffin, the rolling darkness returned to silence like a tide. Lin Sun and the others looked over it the first time. They saw a figure walking out from the depths of the darkness. She was dressed in classic black clothes, wore a crown on her head, and held a scepter in her hand. He was like a god that had walked out from the darkness. He possessed a supreme might, and the boundless darkness all bowed down to him. Her fair face was as beautiful as a painting, and her facial features were like the masterpiece of God, which didn't seem to belong to this world. Every move she made carried an otherworldly charm. Anyone who saw her would tremble with shock and awe, as if they were looking at a god that couldn't be blasphemed. When her figure walked out of the eternal coffin, the hall suddenly fell into silence, and an indescribable, majestic aura quietly filled the air. She was clearly close at hand, but it gave people the feeling that she was already standing proudly beyond the clouds of the ninth heaven, and they could only look at her from afar and couldn't touch her. After a short silence, 13 cried out involuntarily, "My lord!" He was so excited that his eyes turned red and tears flowed down uncontrollably. This was the lord he was most familiar with, the eternal night emperor who had taken him to travel around the world. Lin Sun felt suffocated as if a stone was stuffed in his heart. Xia Ji. Had she really changed completely? 13. A cold sigh sounded, and she looked at 13. It's been so many years. Why did you wait here? In a word, it proved that Xia Ji's original body had awakened, or in other words, Xia Ji had integrated with her original body and restored her past memories. Chen Linkong narrowed his eyes slightly. Lin Sun's face turned pale, and an unspeakable sense of loss suddenly welled up in his heart, as if the most important part of his heart had been gouged out and lost. My lord, I have long vowed that I must wait for you to wake up in this life. Fortunately, my lord has finally woken up. 13 was so excited that he was a little incoherent. Fortunately, he soon thought of something and looked at Lin Sun. My lord, it's this fellow practitioner Lin Sun who brought your life soul back. She looked at Lin Sun with a pale face, as if she had lost her soul. P.S. Goldfish eat first. It'll be a little late. Chapter 2909. She was silent for a moment and said, "Thank you." 2 words made the last support in Lin Sun's heart collapse, and his mind was in a mess. When had Xia Ji ever said such strange and polite words to him before? No. He was lost in thought, and his heart was sour and lost. If he could regret it, would he still make this decision? Lin Sun asked himself and finally got an answer. Yes. Do you remember Xia Ji's memory? Chen Linkong couldn't help asking at this time. Her slender figure looked mysterious and majestic. She said casually, "So what? I can erase some memories at any time." Chen Linkong couldn't help but widen his eyes. 13 was also anxious and said, "Master, child Lin Sun." Before he finished, Lin Sun interrupted him, "Don't say it." At this time, Lin Sun looked dull as if he had no feelings. Your master is your master, and Xia is Xia Ji. Chen Linkong couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect such a result. "I'll go out for some fresh air. You talk." After that, Lin Sun walked out of the hall. It was dark on Silent Night Ridge, and there were lights stretching like a long dragon in the distance. Lin Sun sat alone on a stone, lost in thought. He had expected such a result, but he didn't expect it to be true. Xia Ji had obviously recovered her past memories and possessed the wisdom and state of mind of the past. She was no longer the Xia Ji he knew. Lin Sun suddenly felt indescribably powerless. No matter how high his achievements were and how great his reputation was, what was the use of it? He still couldn't get what he wanted after all. Lin Sun didn't know what he would become without Xia Ji in the future. He didn't know anything. Unprecedented frustration and confusion reverberated in his heart like a fog that couldn't be dispelled. He even had no strength to be angry, regretful, and angry. Those who are overwhelmed with sorrow can only bid farewell to each other. Do you regret it? A cold voice rang out. Lin Sun was stiff all over. He turned his head and saw her figure had come to his side. In the night, she looked so mysterious, supreme, and majestic, and so strange. After a long silence, Lin Sun shook his head. This is my own choice. Have you ever thought of making her forget the past for the rest of her life? If that's the case, I believe she won't have any objections. She sat on the side with her hands crossed. Her beautiful eyes were like stars in the sky. I have, Lin Sun said softly, but I prefer to let her live clearly instead of ignoring everything else as long as she is with me. In other words, I just want her to live for herself, even if she is with me. In the end, he smiled bitterly. Perhaps doing this is very stupid, but my heart is telling me that if I don't do this, I will regret it for the rest of my life. I've regretted it for the rest of my life, and I can't rest easy, she nodded and said. I know all her memories from the time you met in Feiyun village to the time she found me. Every scene is vivid in my mind. I know she can only have you in her heart. But obviously, you haven't really taken this feeling seriously. Lin Sun was stunned. What do you mean? She stood up and looked into the distance. Her voice was indifferent. If you like her, why don't you tell her? Don't you think she is very humble by your side? Lin Sun was stunned. Does she ever care who you are? Does she care that you already have a wife and children? Have I ever refused you once? Her voice was cold, and every question made Lin Sun's mind shocked. In the end, she looked at Lin Sun. What about you? What have you done for her? If you think it's enough to keep her by your side and not let others bully her, then in my opinion, there is no need for her to stay by your side. These words were like a heavy hammer, hitting Lin Sun's heart hard. His expression was absent-minded, and he said bitterly after a long time, perhaps I was really wrong. I took her to be my life, and I've always firmly believed that no matter who came, unless I died, they would absolutely be unable to take her away from me. But now, it seems that I really owe her too much. He couldn't help coughing violently in the end. There was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. This was the result of the great impact on his state of mind, which hurt himself. This was also the first time that Lin Sun coughed blood because of the ups and downs of his state of mind. He didn't have it before. He wouldn't have it in the future, because in this world, only Xia Ji could make his state of mind go wrong. If she were still here, would you marry her? Yes, Lin Sun said subconsciously. Then he was stunned and said with a desolate look, but it's too late. I thought I could do things with a clear conscience in this life. But now, speaking of this, he was so sad that his eyes turned red. A clear conscience. It was ridiculous. In this world, who dared to say that he could live with a clear conscience? The more he thought about it, the more depressed he became. He didn't know how long it had been. A voice sounded, Lin Sun, I'm hungry. Okay, I'll cook something delicious for you. Lin Sun stood up subconsciously. This was an instinctive habit he had developed over the years. Every time Xia Ji said this, he would naturally take out the best things he had collected and make delicious food for her. It was like this before, and it was still like this now. However, after getting up this time, Lin Sun was stunned. As if struck by lightning, he stared straight at the slender figure standing in front of him, who was still wearing the ancient robe, wearing a crown and holding a scepter. But, Lin Sun, why are you looking at me like this? She frowned, her clear and beautiful eyes full of doubts. Just like in the past years, she never hid her emotions in her heart. Lin Sun only felt that something was fermenting in his heart and was about to explode. His mind was a little confused. How could this be? Could it be? Did someone bully you? She asked again, looking Lin Sun up and down with a worried look in her eyes. Lin Sun's voice trembled and his whole body trembled with excitement. Xia Ji, is it really you? She frowned and said, Lin Sun, are you stupid? Of course it's me. Lin Sun was stunned. He suddenly took a few deep breaths and grinned. But as he smiled, his eyes became moist. He couldn't control himself anymore. He stepped forward and hugged the slender figure tightly, as if he was afraid that he would lose her again. The tears in his eyes finally flowed down disappointingly. Xia Ji, it's really you, he murmured, joy surging in his heart like an erupting volcano. The feeling of regaining what he had lost was like a tide of ups and downs, drowning him completely. In his life of cultivation, there had never been a day or a moment as joyful, excited, and happy as this moment. He hugged her tightly, as if he was hugging his own life. At that time, the night was just nice. P.S. This chapter is slightly short, but I've tried my best. I hope everyone likes it. Chapter 29:10. A table of sumptuous dishes was placed in front of Xia Ji. As usual, she carefully and attentively wiped out the food on the table. Not far away, Lin Sun was barbecuing. The huge yellow and oily beast leg made a sizzling sound under the fiery red flame, and the tempting fragrance spread. In the night, this remote and deserted place in the mountain added some smoke and fire. From time to time, Lin Sun would look up at Xia Ji. His eyes were full of smiles, his lips were full of smiles, and his whole body was full of smiles. He had a guilty conscience. However, what was lost was regained. It was just like the twists and turns of the road. There was nothing in the world that could match such joy. In the palace not far away, Chun Linkong and 13 watched this scene quietly with a smile on their faces. Master's decision is right. Although her past memory and cultivation are sealed, as long as she walks out of the darkness and lives in the light, she will no longer be homeless, 13 said softly. I know that this is Master's greatest wish. A person who masters the law of fate will naturally not be willing to be teased by fate. This choice may be regarded as a new life for her. In the future, her attainments in the Tao will not be weaker than before. Chun Linkong said slowly. After eating and drinking, Xia Ji fell asleep. Lin Sun wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. But after seeing this, he couldn't help feeling relaxed and happy. This was the Xia Ji he was most familiar with. She ate and slept. No matter what happened in the outside world, she only lived in her own world. And he was in her world. However, Lin Sun knew that his state of mind had changed. One day, he would welcome summer solstice into his family in a grand manner. Perhaps Xia Ji didn't care about these things at all, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he just wanted to do more for her. As the Holy Emperor of Eternal Night said before, he had never really faced this feeling in the past. But in the future, it would never happen again. How do you feel? Chun Linkong found Lin Sun and asked with a smile. I used to be like a person in a dream. Now I wake up and suddenly see the light. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Chun Linkong said, Now, do you think that Lady Xia Ji's background is still very important? Lin Sun shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. The reason why he came to the Ruins of Fortune to investigate Xia Ji's past was to make a decision. Now that Xia Ji had fused with her body, her past life was no longer important. The Eternal Night, Divine Emperor, is an extraordinary woman. After fusing with her life soul, she could have comprehended the mysteries of the origin of creation in this divine city of creation and resolved the great silence lifeless tribulation, allowing herself to achieve a true breakthrough. Chun Linkong said, but in the end, she didn't do that, and she sealed her past experiences and attainments in order to fulfill Miss Xia Ji's wish. Such boldness is sufficient to make all the men in the world sigh at their inferiority. Lin Sun was also overwhelmed with emotions. In the eyes of the Divine Emperor of Eternal Night, perhaps the Great Way was not as important as the words, having a home to return to. Little friend, there is something you must know. Please enlighten me, Senior. Miss Xia Ji is no longer a wisp of life soul, but has mastered her original body. But the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor has sealed her cultivation and memories, which means that the power Miss Xia Ji has now is still her previous cultivation. Chun Linkong said, and the 3 treasures, the crown of fate, the staff of karma, and the jade of time, have also been turned into natal objects and sealed. At present, she can't use them with her current cultivation. After a pause, he continued, however, as Miss Xia Ji's cultivation improves in the future, the power sealed by the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor will be gradually removed. In other words, every time Miss Xia Ji's cultivation improves, she can open a layer of seal and obtain the power that belongs to the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor. But you don't have to worry, Xia Ji will not be affected by the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor. In the end, there will be no Eternal Night, Divine Emperor in this world. In the end, Chun Linkong sighed. A man who had the ability to resolve the great silence fateless disaster would rather cut off his previous cultivation just to get out of the darkness and have a home to return to. If there were other powerful figures, would they be willing to do so? Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Lin Sun was also grateful to the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor. In fact, this is what the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor told me, and I just tell you. Chun Linkong said, or from the moment she woke up in the eternal coffin, she had already made a decision. The reason why she treated you like that was nothing more than to see what kind of person you were and whether you were worthy of being entrusted by Miss Xia Ji. Lin Sun thought of the previous scenes, and his heart was in turmoil. Whoosh! Chun Linkong raised his hand and waved, and the eternal coffin appeared out of thin air, but its shape had changed. It was like a bronze boat, diffusing a vast and heavy atmosphere. This treasure has been removed by the eternal night, divine emperor. He said he would give it to you as a gift. Please accept it. When Miss Xia Ji practices in the future, she can place her in this treasure, which will be of great benefit to her perception of fate, time, and cause and effect. Chun Linkong said. Lin Sun nodded and put away the eternal boat. Chun Linkong smiled and said, other than that, this treasure contains shocking mysteries. Apart from the star chart that leads to the gate of eternity, there's also a mysterious fortune. After little friend reaches the eternal realm, you will be able to comprehend it. The star map leading to the eternal gate. This reminded Lin Sun of the disaster that his great-grandfather Luo Tongtian experienced. Senior, do you know where the eternal gate leads to? Lin Sun asked. Chun Linkong shook his head. You have to think about it and explore it yourself in the future. When my great-grandfather went to the eternal gate, he was seriously injured by a mysterious law bell, so he was besieged by the enemies of the eighth heaven. Lin Sun said, and when the eternal night divine emperor came to the divine city of fortune, there was also a mysterious law bell in the great silence disaster. In your opinion, is this the same law bell? Chun Linkong narrowed his eyes and said, is it the primordial bell? The primordial bell. Lin Sun was also shocked. Chun Linkong said, if it is really the primordial bell, it is very likely to be as you said. Because according to the information left by my grandfather, the primordial bell is also an ominous object born in the change of era, and it is very likely to come from the person behind the scenes. Lin Sun couldn't help saying, if so, doesn't it mean that the place where the eternal gate leads to is very likely the place where the person behind the scenes is hiding? Chun Linkong shook his head. No one knows whether the person behind the scenes is a person or a rule force. After thinking about it, he said, if there's a chance, I will also go to the eternal gate to see what mysteries are hidden in it. Lin Sun didn't think too much about it. These things were still far away for him now. Where are you going to leave, my little friend? Chun Linkong asked with a smile. Of course, the sooner the better. Lin Sun was refreshed. After being trapped in this city for more than 6 years, Lin Sun naturally wanted to leave as soon as possible. What's more, his purpose of coming to the ruins of fortune had been achieved, so he really didn't want to waste any more time here. After all, if he wasn't trapped in the divine city of fortune, with his cultivation, he would have had the opportunity to reach the nirvana realm a few years ago. All right, then let's leave early tomorrow morning. Chun Linkong made a decision. Although Lin Sun was excited, he couldn't help but ask, Senior, there are many eternal realm antiques guarding outside the city. How should we leave? Chun Linkong smiled and teased. Of course we go out. Lin Sun, give me the god refining pot. Chun Linkong said. Lin Sun was startled and suddenly said, so Senior has been in contact with Senior Wuyang and the others for a long time. As he spoke, he took out the god refining pot and handed it to Chun Linkong. Chun Linkong said, do you still remember what I told you before? You're the master of this city now, and only almighty figures that obtain your acknowledgement can enter this city and not be suppressed by the energy of the laws of this city. Lin Sun nodded. Chun Linkong said, now you can condense a rule brand and inject it into the god refining pot. Lin Sun didn't think too much about it. The complete diagram of the divine city of fortune appeared in his mind, and then he formed a seal with his hands. Instantly, a shapeless rule force was drawn over and coiled around the tip of his finger before condensing into an obscure and profound seal. This seal was like a key, and once one obtained its power, one would be able to enter and exit the divine city of fortune no matter how high one's cultivation was. Wham! When Lin Sun poured the energy of the seal into the god refining pot, a wave of strange fluctuation instantly transformed into ripples that spread out, and it seemed as if the rules of this expanse of the heavens and the earth had silently changed. Fellow Taoists, please show yourself. At the same time, Chun Linkong tossed the god refining pot into the air, and spoke in a light voice. Bang! The god-refining pot glowed and shot out numerous dazzling and resplendent rays of light that condensed into over 20 figures in the air. Every single figure emitted boundless and terrifying divine might that covered the heavens and the earth like an abyss, and they were like gods that stood towering above the heavens and the earth. Ha ha! How many years has it been? I've finally entered this city. Thank you for your help, Brother Chun. A voice rumbled like thunder. It was a divine tree that was tens of thousands of meters tall that spoke. There were actually stars hanging on its branches, and its leaves were rolling like a flowing galaxy that poured out endless starlight. Myriad star divine tree. Lin Sun's pupils constricted. This was a legendary creature that possessed the power of myriad stars and could evolve into a starry sky. It was an eternal existence. No, we should thank this young friend Lin Sun. If he hadn't seen through the mysteries of the Star of Fortune, how could we have the opportunity to enter this city? A gentle voice sounded like the chanting of Sanskrit. Lin Sun looked up and saw the figure of a Buddha standing there. The figure didn't seem to be tall, but it filled the entire sky. The light of Buddha flowed around its body, and it sprinkled crystal and divine heavenly flowers. Lin Sun was shocked. Xingjia Buddha, a long time ago, the supreme figure that left behind the 3,000 pagodas in the Buddha earth of the absolute domain. It was also the heart of slaughter that he left behind. P.S. The second one is slightly later. Chapter 29:11. When my Tao is proved, I know the suffering of all living beings. So far, Lin Sun still couldn't forget the words left by Xingjia Buddha when he obtained the heart of slaughter in the absolute domain. This was a real, great mercy, which bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. Yes, we should thank my young friend Lin Sun. Ha ha, I prepared for it. It's just a big battle. We've been traveling in the ruins of fate for so many years, but there are only a few opportunities to fight against the Protoss. Let's compete with them this time. Voices resounded between heaven and earth. Some were ethereal, some were tranquil, some were heroic, and some were deep, as if the gods were talking and stirring up the universe. Lin Sun looked over and quickly recognized Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Her figure was slender and as cold as the moon, but she exuded a lonely and cold aura, as if she stood aloof from the world. Chun Linkong once said that all the fortunes in the absolute domain were obtained by you. In this way, we can call each other friends. Wu Yang said softly, with an amiable look in his eyes. Lin Sun cupped his hands at a distance. Then, he recognized Dark Blood Underworld Emperor, whose figure was bathed in obscure light, like an emperor who dominated the world, exuding an arrogant aura. Don't worry, I won't argue with you about the grudge between you and my son. Dark Blood Underworld Emperor snorted coldly. Lin Sun also cupped his hands at a distance. Soon, Lin Sun recognized another familiar figure. It was a white-robed man who was as handsome as a young man. The aura he exuded was like 1,000 elephants bursting out, oppressing the universe. Divine Elephant Emperor. In the absolute domain, Lin Sun had been tested and tempered in the Wanxiang ancient steel and obtained the lifelong experience and fortunes of the Divine Elephant Emperor. How could he not recognize him? Seeing so many powerful figures of the ancient Wasteland Fighting Alliance, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling emotional. Star Tree, Xingjia Buddha, Dark Blood Underworld Emperor, Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Divine Elephant Emperor. Any one of them was powerful enough to shock the world and overlook all living beings. Now, they were all gathered together. In addition to these people, there were more than a dozen peerless giants and overlords present. These powerful beings had walked out of the starry sky ancient path in the ancient desolation realm since the immemorial age. Of course, they were no longer at the Emperor realm. Lin Sun immediately felt that the power surging in their bodies had exceeded the scope of a mortal level. It was incredible. Everyone, long time no see. Back then, thousands of us walked out of the ancient path of the starry sky together. Now, there are less than 30 of us left, and we are scattered all over the world. At this moment, Chun Linkong sighed with emotion. If it wasn't for this fortuitous coincidence, I don't know how long it would take for us to gather together like this again. The experts of the ancient desolation realm also sighed with emotion. It was indeed not easy for them to walk side by side on the path of the great Tao until now. Over the course of countless years, it often meant that there were too many incidents of life and death. At that time, there were a few thousand people that had left the ancient path and the starry sky with them. However, after experiencing countless years of ups and downs, only a few dozen of them were still alive now. The great Tao is heartless, and it is all in the separation of life and death. Everyone, how about we drink to our heart's content tonight? Chun Ling Kong suggested. Okay, sure, that is how it should be. I've had this thought for a long time. The group of experts laughed. On this night, Lonely Night Ridge was filled with cheers and laughter, and it was a joyous occasion. Lin Sun chatted with them and greeted them one by one. He talked about the various things that had happened in the land of extinction. Wu Yang, Xing Jia, Long Xiang, and the others also sighed with emotion. Lin Sun asked Wu Yang a question that had been in his mind for a long time. Why did she leave a headless body in the land of extinction? Wu Yang's answer was simple. Her head was cut off by an enemy and made into a white bone jade pendant. She regarded it as the shame of her life. Later on, this enemy was also beheaded by her, giving her a taste of her own medicine. Wu Yang also said that she had met Lin Sun's uncle, Luo Qing'an. She knew about the existence of the heaven-accessing place and how terrifying the talent of the devouring abyss was. From Xing Jia, Long Xiang, and the others, Lin Sun also learned a lot about the descendants of Feng Xiyuan. For example, Xing Jia and Gu Yupu, the ninth senior brother, had discussed Tao for 100 years and appreciated each other. Long Xiang and Li Xianwei were enemies. After fighting for thousands of years, the third senior sister, Ruosu, intervened and turned the hostility into friendship. What was even more unbelievable to Lin Sun was that, according to Chun Linkong, the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor and the eighth senior brother, Bo Swansea, were actually old enemies. Both of them were fond of collecting rare treasures in the world. It was inevitable that there would be some conflicts, but every time, it was the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor who was at a disadvantage. He was even robbed by Bo Swansea. When talking about the past, the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor's face darkened. He cursed that among the descendants of Feng Xiyuan, Bo Swansea was the most sinister and black-hearted one. Lin Sun couldn't help but be amused. Only now did he realize that his robbery of the Son of Hell was similar to Bo Swansea's robbery of the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor. Apart from that, the mighty figures of the ancient desolation realm also told Lin Sun many things that he didn't know. Lin Sun couldn't help but widen his horizons. Tonight, Lin Sun finally got to see the glory of his ancestors. It made him feel a lot of emotions. Thinking back to a long time ago, he was just a young man searching for the great path. The mighty figures present here were existences that he could only look up to. They were like legendary existences. Now, he could gather together with them and talk cheerfully. How could he not feel emotional? It could be said that this was also the happiest day since Lin Sun entered the ruins of fate. Late at night, Lin Sun found 13 and asked, "Senior, what are your plans for the future?" 13 had obviously thought about this question for a long time. He said, "I have been trapped in this city for countless years. It's time for me to find my own way to break through." Lin Sun already knew that 13's cultivation had been the transcendent realm for a long time. The way he wanted to break through must be related to the eternal Tao. It's a pity that this ruins of fate is shrouded by an invisible rule power. It's like a cage. Any cultivator who belongs to hundreds of eras or civilizations can't leave. Otherwise, I hope that Senior can go to the eternal Tao with me. Lin Sun sighed softly. He admired 13 very much. He even felt that he owed him. After all, because of Xie Ji, the eternal night, divine emperor disappeared from the world. This was probably a great blow to 13. Therefore, before he left, Lin Sun wanted to do something for 13. If you want, there's no harm in letting him stay in this city. Chun Linkong came from afar and said softly, "As long as he gets your approval, he won't be suppressed by the rule power of this city. In this way, he can also comprehend the source of fate in this city. This will be of great help to him in the eternal Tao realm. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. He looked at 13. What do you think, senior? 13 said, That's naturally the best. Lin Sun nodded with a smile. My young friend, tomorrow morning, I will send you off with the others. Before that, do you have any unfinished business? Chen Linkong asked. Lin Sun shook his head. He only had two purposes in coming to the ruins of fate this time. One was to save his parents, and the other was to solve the problem of Xia Zhi's identity. Now that he had achieved his goals, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Lin Sun asked, Senior, I have captured the divine sons of the various divine clans. I wonder if they will help me leave tomorrow? Chen Linkong shook his head. Anyone who has stepped into the eternal realm will understand that the value of the eternal coffin is more important than the lives of those divine sons. Naturally, they won't really care about the lives of those divine sons. Lin Sun said, That is to say, even if they want to negotiate with me, it's impossible for them to let me go just because their lives are in my hands. Yes, Chen Linkong nodded. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He said, Then I know what to do. Chen Linkong seemed to realize something and said, My young friend, if you completely offend the major divine clans in the ruins of fate, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble in the future. Aren't they unable to leave the ruins of fate? It's impossible now, but it doesn't mean it's impossible in the future. In the future, let's talk about the future later. Lin Sun looked very calm. Chen Linkong smiled and said no more. Late at night, in the depths of the starry sky outside the city, suddenly, a muddy and aged voice resounded, and it was filled with excitement. I made a divination earlier, and that shocking event will arrive tomorrow. Suddenly, there was a wave of power in the depths of the starry sky, and terrifying thoughts resounded. What? Is the divination true? Someone asked. It's absolutely true. The divination this time is unprecedentedly clear. In my opinion, there must be something abnormal about the little guy surnamed Lin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to leave the city tomorrow. The muddy old voice said, Since it's a shocking change, it must have something to do with him. But there may be other changes. You'd better be prepared for the unexpected. Someone said in a low voice. Yes, there's a faint bloody light in the divination this time, which is a sign of great danger. I think there is only one possibility. At this point, the muddy old voice fell silent. What possibility? Brother Gao Yang, don't keep us guessing anymore. Many people couldn't help but ask. I'm worried that this bloody disaster may have something to do with us. His words silenced all the people present, and the atmosphere in the depths of the starry sky suddenly became depressed. What do you mean? A cold voice asked. You should be well aware that if Lin Sun leaves the city tomorrow, he will have no chance to leave. But the eternal coffin in his body may cause a bloody storm. When the muddy old voice said this, there was a silence in the depths of the starry sky. They all realized that when they fought for the eternal coffin, the bloody disaster would naturally come. In the end, who would be able to obtain this treasure? Who would be able to withdraw safely? No one knew, but they were all sure that no one present would give up the eternal coffin. This is destined to be inevitable. Tomorrow, you can rely on your own means. A deep voice said resolutely and decisively. This night, the atmosphere in the depths of the starry sky was particularly depressing. A storm was coming. P.S. It's time to write the final plot of the Ruins of Fate. Tonight, Rong Jinyu adjust her thoughts and state and continue to write tomorrow. Finally, tomorrow is the first day of the month. As for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 29:12. Early in the morning on the next day, Lin Sun walked towards the South Heaven entrance by himself on the bustling streets. Many cultivators noticed this scene, and they felt bewildered in their hearts. What does this fellow surnamed Lin intend to do? When they saw Lin Sun's figure gradually approach the South Heaven entrance, all the cultivators that were paying attention to Lin Sun's movements were horrified. Lin Sun intends to leave the city. There was an enormous square outside the South Heaven entrance, and all those that entered and exited the city would stop on the square before entering or leaving. However, at this moment, the square was deathly silent, because all the cultivators that came to Fortune City today had their paths blocked off by a group of boundlessly terrifying auras, and they were unable to move forward. Naturally, no one was bound to be able to leave the city. So, when Lin Sun's figure appeared on the enormous square, he seemed to be extremely conspicuous, and he seemed to be extremely lonely as he stood there all by himself. Bang! In the depths of the starry sky, a group of terrifying auras that had been suppressed and waiting for a long time surged. The stars shook while space rumbled, and it seemed like the entire universe was trembling violently. After that, numerous terrifying consciousnesses swept towards the South Heaven entrance. However, when they were about to approach the enormous square, they were obstructed by the energy of the laws that covered the entire city. So, Lin Sun wasn't affected at all, and his expression was calm and indifferent. He gazed towards the depths of the starry sky, and then he suddenly smiled and said, "I've made all of you wait." His casual words resounded through the murderous and turbulent starry sky, and it entered into the ears of all the seniors that had been waiting here for over 6 years. "Lin Sun, do you know your crimes?" A heavy voice resounded. A black-robed man with black hair and a black beard appeared in the depths of the starry sky. His entire body was coiled with arcs of black lightning, and he was like an overlord of lightning in the darkness. Liangxiu Xiao, an eternal realm senior of the Liangxiu clan. He'd questioned Lin Sun in a stern voice as soon as he arrived, and if it was any other ordinary person, that person would have probably been terrified a long time ago. However, Lin Sun smiled and said, "Just these words of yours have caused the death of all the clansmen of the Liangxiu clan in the city." Whem! A rain of light flowed as a screen of light floated up into appearance. Numerous scenes appeared on the screen of light, and every single scene revealed the figure of a cultivator. However, in merely an instant, they were soundlessly annihilated. In an instant, these scenes vanished without a trace. "Did you see it clearly?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. As the master of the divine city of fortune, he could annihilate any cultivator in the city with a single thought. In the distance, Liangxiu Zhao's expression had turned gloomy while divine light surged explosively from his eyes, and it caused this expanse of the starry sky to roil and surge. He was furious, because all the people that were killed on the screen of light were from the Liangxiu clan. Evil creature. Liang Xiaoxiao's killing intent was piercingly cold. Black lightning rumbled all over his body as he suddenly punched out. Boom! In the sky above Creation City, a strand of energy of the laws that seemed like a taboo and obscure descended abruptly, and it was like a divine whip of the heavens that fiercely slashed this fist into pieces and dispersed it. Liangxiu Zhao's pupils constricted, and he moved far away to avoid being struck by the energy of the laws. Lin Sun noticed this scene as well, and he naturally knew that this was the forbidden energy formed from the river diagram laws that covered the sky above the entire city. "Lin Sun, let go of the divine princes of our clans, and we'll let you live. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll never be able to leave this city again." An aged and muddy voice resounded. In the distant starry sky, the figure of a young man in a golden robe appeared. His eyes were like a pair of golden lamps that glowed brilliantly. He stood with his hands behind his back while a myriad of divine flames rushed out from behind him, and it seemed as if it would burn the starry sky. His aura was extremely terrifying. He looked like a young man, but his voice was muddy and aged to the extreme. This person was one of the seniors of the Gaoyang clan, Gaoyang Jing. "Is this the opinion of all of you?" asked Lin Sun. "Yes." Gaoyang Jing nodded. Lin Sun let out a long sigh and said, "What a pity." Gaoyang Jing frowned and said, "What's a pity?" Lin Sun said, "Last night, I killed all the 37 divine princes and goddesses that I captured. If all of you had said this earlier, then they wouldn't have had to die." He had a disappointed expression on his face. But these words caused Gaoyang Jing and the other seniors to be shocked and furious, and they almost didn't dare believe their ears. "How dare you? You actually killed them? Damn bastard, you deserve to be cut into pieces." Damn it, damn it. The starry sky was tumbling and shaking, and angry roars resounded through the depths of the starry sky, as if the gods were angry. None of these seniors had expected that Lin Sun would dare to kill the hostages. The terrifying movement shocked all the practitioners in the divine city of fortune. Their expressions changed, and they became more and more puzzled. Lin Sun, what on earth did he want to do? Do you intend to live in this city for the rest of your life by doing this? After a while, Gao Yongjing spoke. His golden robe fluttered, and his aura was terrifying. No, I'm leaving today. Lin Sun shook his head. Leave? All the seniors in the depths of the starry sky were stunned. Without the hostages, how could he leave alive? You seem to be full of confidence. Do you have another way? Gao Yongjing asked. Lin Sun nodded, of course. For a time, Gao Yongjing, Liang Xiao, and all the other seniors frowned without end. They were very puzzled because who would be able to help Lin Sun in the ruins of creation, and who would dare to go against the various divine clans? Wasn't this courting death? Lin Sun didn't say anything more. The smelting god pot suddenly appeared in his hand. This treasure was mottled and suffused with a chaotic and obscure light. The smelting god pot of Old Man and Shui. Some seniors recognized it at the first possible moment. So it's this old thing. The others recalled that a long time ago, someone had once walked in the Great Ming era with the smelting god pot in his hand, and he revealed extremely shocking power. There was once a mighty figure of the divine clan who wanted to seize this treasure, but he was refined to death by this treasure. The Great Ming era was originally the territory of the Wu clan, but it was occupied by a group of outsiders a long time ago, and the Dark Blood Emperor was one of them. Someone whispered. In this way, this kid seems to have obtained the help of those outsiders. Many people realized something, and their eyes flickered with a cold light. Ridiculous! For countless years, these outsiders only dared to live in the Great Ming era, and they didn't dare to make trouble at all. Otherwise, I'm afraid they would have been annihilated by our divine clan a long time ago. Now, they still dare to meddle in this matter with their strength? They're simply courting death. Perhaps they're also willing to risk everything for the eternal coffin. Humph! Let's take this opportunity today to let these outsiders know who the real master of the ruins of fate is. A smelting god pot allowed those seniors to speculate a lot of information in an instant. It could be seen how vicious the eyes of these old guys who had lived for countless years were. Lin Sun didn't care about this. Although he was a participant in this upcoming battle, he was doomed to have no ability to challenge any eternal realm existence, even if the other side only sent out their Dharma form. Killing an immortal figure like him at the peak of the Heaven Longevity realm was still as easy as pinching an ant. In the final analysis, this would be a contest between figures at the Eternal Realm. Whether he could leave the ruins of fate depended on whether Chen Linkong and other powerful figures of the ancient Desolation Realm could break through the current predicament. Lin Sun didn't worry about this. Therefore, after taking out the smelting god pot, his figure flashed and swept towards the distant starry sky. Boom! Just as Lin Sun's figure left the area of the divine city of fate, a giant golden hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed at him fiercely. The 5 fingers of the giant golden hand were like pillars supporting the sky, and the palm lines were like traces of the Great Way, filled with the terrifying power of the eternal realm, which could almost smash the mountains and rivers in the sky. Let me! A cold voice rang out from the smelting god pot. Faster than the voice, a branch pouring with silver starlight pierced out at an incredible speed and blocked in front of the giant golden hand. The stars condensed on the branch exploded with a loud bang. The starry sky shook violently, and unparalleled, terrifying torrents swept out. The dazzling divine light illuminated the dark, starry sky. Visible to the naked eye, the giant golden hand was pierced and exploded with a loud bang. In the distant starry sky, a cold snort came. Then, a middle-aged man in a fiery red robe emerged, holding a jade ruler in his hand. His body was filled with obscure and mysterious Taoist diagrams with amazing power. Ingzhan, He was the senior of the Ing clan of the Divine Clan. It was he who had launched the giant golden hand to capture Lin Sun. But he failed. Lin Sun was unscathed. In front of him, a 10,000-meter-high divine tree stood. Its branches were full of stars, like a chaotic starry sky, and its aura was strong. What a divine tree of myriad stars! Today, I will refine you into a Taoist soldier. With a cold and murderous voice, Ing Zhan attacked again with the jade ruler in his hand. An ant trying to shake a tree. Don't overestimate yourself. Branches rushed out of the divine tree of myriad stars and extended to the starry sky, like a dancing whip of heaven. They fought fiercely with Ing Zhan at the first moment. Between Lin Sun's eyebrows, looming golden Taoist patterns emerged. This was the power of Chun Linkong, which could make him unaffected by this kind of fighting force. Otherwise, he would be shocked to death by the terrible fighting waves of the first moment, not to mention killing his way out of this starry sky. Go! A loud shout rang out. In the void, a colorful pagoda suddenly appeared, rumbling and crushing the starry sky, covering Lin Sun's head. Another senior took action, summoning the pagoda and trying to take Lin Sun. At this critical moment, in the smelting god pot, a halberd suddenly broke through the air. Clang! The glowing pagoda was forcefully sent flying away. Looking at the person holding the halberd, wearing a black battle robe, his figure was as tall as a mountain, like a mighty and domineering emperor. It was the dark-blood underworld emperor. Boy, just keep going. Holding the halberd, his cold eyes were like lightning as he opened the way in front. Humph, just you. The owner of the pagoda appeared. It was a thin and short old man, carrying the pagoda and rushing over. The terrifying aura shook the starry sky, causing it to collapse and explode. Boom! Heaven and earth were overturned, and the starry sky was in disorder. Countless stars exploded in this supreme battle. The collapsing torrent of the great way swept and spread, causing a scene of destruction to appear in the void. Except for the divine city of fortune, all other places were in turmoil. Lin Sun took a deep breath and didn't watch the battle. He continued forward with the smelting god pot in his hand. P.S. Before 7 p.m. on the second watch, there will be more tonight. On the first day of the month, I urgently need a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 29:13. Looking from the divine city of fortune, the starry sky was in chaos. The power of the eternal realm swept across, as if it was about to explode the starry sky. It was too terrifying. The eternal realm was beyond the immortal realm. Among the hundreds of divine clans in the divine ruins of fortune, there were not many divine clans that had eternal realm experts. But now, outside the divine city of fortune, a group of eternal realm experts had gathered and started a fierce battle in the starry sky. It was as if the world was going to be destroyed. God, how? How could this be? I didn't expect Lin Sun to invite an eternal realm expert to fight. This is too incredible. Fortunately, the divine city of fortune is covered by the power of rules. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed. The city was in an uproar. Countless cultivators were in a panic. This was an instinctive fear. Suddenly, a thunderous roar sounded in the starry sky. Kill! A spear descended from the apocalypse. There were hundreds of millions of ashes. Huamuli Ligulai, Pretty Dowry Muting 3, by Pu. Forcing a Moya, Lin Sun, who was walking in the void, suddenly felt a fatal threat. This old thing is not weak. Let me do it. In an ethereal and cold voice, Battle Emperor Wu Yang appeared. His slender figure was shrouded in a sparkling mist, faintly discernible. She swung her sword. Chi! Space was torn apart like a canvas, and then a peerless blade that carried a profound and unfathomable force forcefully blocked the spear that shot towards Chen Shi. The sword and spear clashed. A terrifying power spread out. Even if they were extremely far away, countless cultivators in Fortune City were still shocked to the point their scalps went numb when they witnessed this scene, and their souls almost left their bodies. This was like a battle between the gods and the legends. At the same time, Lin Sun's figure was about to be affected. A Sanskrit voice sounded from the smelting god pot. Tut! In an instant, the shock waves from the battle that had swept over suddenly dissipated. Then, the figure of Saint Buddha Xing Jia walked out. He was solemn and dignified. There was no dust or dirt on his body. He glowed brightly and opened a path in front of Lin's son. "Monk, you are asking for trouble." A muddy voice sounded in the depths of the starry sky. At this moment, Gao Yongjing made his move. Boom! As he took a step forward, the starry sky suddenly trembled. Rays of divine light that looked like blades and swords surged out from his body. As he waved his sleeve, these rays of divine light shot out explosively. Holy Buddha Xing Jia put his palms together, and a Buddhist pagoda appeared in front of him. The body of the pagoda reflected a myriad of Buddhist lights, and it blocked the attack. But at this moment, a black wooden sword suddenly appeared and slashed at the back of Xing Jia Holy Buddha's head. It was silent and unbelievably fast. Bang! However, this black wooden sword was fiercely smashed by a large hand, causing it to shake and fly backwards. 2 against 1. Shameless. The one who repelled the black wooden sword was the Dracophant Wartharch. He looked like an elegant youth, but his aura was so terrifying that it caused the starry sky to tremble. As he spoke, he flashed forward and struck out with his fist. At that instant, it seemed as if a colossal elephant was trampling through the starry sky and roaring into the sky, and even the stars seemed extraordinarily tiny in comparison. This was destined to be a chaotic battle. The myriad star divine tree, Dark Blood Emperor, Wuyong, Xing Jia, Dragon Elephant, and other powerful figures walked out one after another to protect Lin's son. However, they were also entangled by the enemies, and they fought fiercely in different areas of the starry sky. For a moment, the starry sky was simply plunged into chaos. Scenes of heaven and earth collapsing, and everything collapsing could be seen everywhere. As Lin Sun continued forward, the old antiques from the various clans attacked one after another. Each of them displayed unimaginably terrifying power. Lin Sun couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Without a doubt, if he were in Lin Sun's place, he would have died countless times. Fortunately, the powerful figures from the ancient desolation realm in the smelting god pot were still there. As Lin Sun moved forward, they also appeared one after another, helping Lin Sun resolve the murderous dangers one after another. Kill! 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 The starry sky was overturned, and the Zhou void was in chaos. As he charged forward and displayed an unparalleled battle, the various grand Tao laws swept out like a tsunami, and merely the aftershock of it was capable of easily destroying a world. This was too terrifying. Even though Lin Sun was protected by the power left by Chen Linkong, he still couldn't help but be shocked. This feeling was like an ant being swept into a stormy ocean. He was too small, and a wave could drown him countless times. Time seemed to be extraordinarily long at this moment. Soon, Lin Sun's face changed. In the distance ahead, 3 majestic and terrifying figures appeared. But in the smelting god pot, there was only one person left. Don't worry. Chen Linkong appeared, smiled, and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder, saying, "This has nothing to do with you. Just move forward." His voice was like magic, calming Lin Sun's tense state of mind. In the distance, 3 existences at the eternal realm came to kill. One of them held a cyan bronze mace and looked extremely powerful. One held a horsetail whisk and gently waved it, stirring up the void. The last one held a Taoist sword with a murderous aura covering the sky and the earth. Boom! The bronze mace was the first to hit, setting off a violent torrent of great path. Chen Linkong stretched out his hand and grasped the bronze mace firmly. He exerted force in his palm and fingers. Boom! The bronze mace and its owner were violently shaken out. Go to hell! A horsetail whisk descended like a burning waterfall of stars. In an instant, Lin Sun only felt as if he was in a flaming purgatory. Get out of here! Chen Linkong made a seal with his hands and pressed them forward. In the earth-shattering collision sound, the man holding the horsetail whisk staggered back, coughing up blood, and his expression changed suddenly. But at the same time, a Taoist sword stabbed straight between Chen Linkong's eyebrows. This sword seemed to ignore the obstruction of time and space. It was incredibly fast and indescribably fierce. Chen Linkong had no way to avoid it. But in the place between his eyebrows, an obscure and mysterious bronze cauldron appeared and blocked the sword at the critical moment. Clang! The sound of the collision seemed to tear the eardrum and shatter the mind. Where the sword and the cauldron collided, a terrible force burst out, causing the nearby starry sky to collapse. He blocked it. In the distance, the man who controlled the Taoist sword was surprised. "You take my sword as well." Chen Linkong waved his sleeve. Swish! A mouthful of mysterious Taoist sword chi whistled out. Suddenly, the void seemed to be filled with sword chi, exploding with a loud bang. The unparalleled sword light poured down, reaching everywhere, reaching everywhere. Puff! Even though the man with the Dao sword had already dodged and blocked it, he was still struck by the sword chi to the point his figure staggered, and strands of cracks appeared on his body. The old man holding the bronze mace and the horsetail whisk changed his face slightly and rushed to kill Chen Linkong. "My path can't be blocked by your Dharma image." Chen Linkong looked cold. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a flying sword filled with starlight, flashing in the void. Puff! The man holding the bronze mace was still on the way, but his body was divided into two halves. His pupils dilated and his face was full of disbelief. Boom! The next moment, the two halves of the body also burst into pieces. Lin Sun gasped. It was so easy to cut off the Dharma image of an eternal realm, which was too terrifying. "Go," Chen Linkong said softly, and the flying sword flashed again. "Oh no!" The old man holding the horsetail whisk changed his face suddenly and was about to dodge. Puff! His head was directly cut off, and his body was destroyed by the unparalleled sword chi. These two consecutive kills also attracted the attention of other people on the battlefield, and there was a burst of exclamation. Different from other powerful figures in the ancient Desolation territory, Chen Linkong showed his unparalleled combat power as soon as he attacked. His flying sword seemed to be invincible, and its killing power was too horrible. "Go," Chen Linkong said again. In the distance, the man holding the Taoist sword, who had already been injured, had no time to dodge. He was also killed by the sword. Lin Sun was shocked by the neat and tidy scene. "This sword is called Banisher. It was given to me by my grandfather. I have cultivated it with my own cultivation for many years. It's easy for me to kill these Dharma images," Chen Linkong said with a smile. He took Lin Sun straight forward. Behind them, the sound of fighting shook the sky. Weiyang, Longxiang, and other powerful figures were still fighting fiercely with their opponents. Chen Linkong ignored them. He took a step forward and rushed forward with Lin Sun as if the stars were moving. But in just a moment, Chen Linkong suddenly stopped. At the same time, his banisher swept out and slashed in the void. Clang! In the distance, a dazzling saber appeared and blocked the banisher. Then, more terrifying figures appeared one after another. There were more than a dozen of them, and each of them had terrifying power. Among them were the three old fogies whose Dharma images had been killed by Chen Linkong just now. The true body is also here. Chen Linkong's eyes slightly narrowed. The true body of an eternal realm expert was much more powerful than the Dharma image, and the combat power they possessed was also worlds apart. "Is it necessary to deal with a young man?" Chen Linkong sighed. "He's not an ordinary young man." A golden-robed old man looked indifferent. Where he stood, the starry sky was chaotic, and the power of rules was surging, as if to suppress his power, but he resisted and resolved them one by one. This meant that the power of rules in this starry sky had felt threatened and instinctively fought back, trying to expel these powerful figures. But unfortunately, the power of rules in this starry sky couldn't do anything to these real, eternal realm experts. "Little friend, take the refining god pot. I'll take you to kill them." Chen Linkong took a deep breath, and a touch of determination flashed in his eyes. Holding the banisher in his hand, he stepped into the starry sky and suddenly rushed over. Lin Sun was wrapped in his power and rushed forward closely with him. The dozen old fogies looked indifferent. One by one, they took out their treasures and suppressed Chun Linkong. Boom! The starry sky seemed to sink, and the void cracked into countless pieces. A terrifying torrent of power spread, and everywhere it passed, there was a scene of destruction. Chun Linkong was shaken and took a few steps back. In the distance, the dozen old fogies couldn't help but have a strange look in their eyes. There was actually someone in this world who could block their joint attack. Again, Chun Linkong's body seemed to be burning, and the light shone brightly. Unparalleled divine power spread from his body, making him look like a peerless immortal, looking down at the heavens. He held the banisher and jumped forward. Chapter 29:14. The battle broke out. However, Lin Sun couldn't see anything from this moment onwards. The Tao laws and means used in a battle of this level were beyond the scope of his understanding. In fact, even sound was isolated. The reason was that even the Tao sounds in the battle emitted the power of the eternal realm, which was a fatal threat to someone at his level. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel nervous. He even thought of many things in the past. He thought of the scene outside the God's Relic, when fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi and martial uncle Kong Zhu brought him along and were chased by the immortal realm powerhouses. He thought of how Xia Ji and him were bathed in blood when they went to the eternal true domain. He also thought of how Tai Xian took him away when they left the flowing light forbidden zone. Those past events were related to being besieged and chased by the enemy. They were so depressing and infuriating. This time, a similar scene seemed to appear again after an unknown period of time. Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure shook and his vision and hearing recovered. Then he saw Chun Linkong panting, his hair disheveled, his figure broken and blurry. He looked extremely miserable, which made Lin Sun's heart skip a beat. The banishers spun in the void, resisting the attacks of the old antiques. However, the banisher clearly couldn't resist for long and was wailing violently. In the distance, more than 10 Eternal Realm antiques had cold and indifferent expressions. Chun Linkong, you're just a Dharma image. It's not easy for you to last until now. Stop struggling. Someone said in a deep voice. Although they said this, their attacks became even more ferocious and fierce. Dharma image. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. A Dharma idol was fighting against more than a dozen Eternal Realm true bodies. How powerful was Chun Linkong's true body? At this moment, Chun Linkong sighed and said in a self-deprecating voice, "Ever since I was born, I've never been in such a sorry state." He suddenly raised his head, flames burning in his eyes, and the self-deprecating expression on his face was replaced by a touch of calmness. "Originally, I couldn't bear to kill you because you're all pitiful people trapped in the ruins of creation. But now, it seems that I've been thinking too highly of myself." As he spoke, his entire body began to burn, and a peerlessly oppressive aura began to spread out in the starry sky. The pupils of all the others narrowed, and they seemed to have noticed that something was off. "Let's attack together. We can't give him a chance to turn the tables. Kill him at all costs." "All right." Boom! Amidst the sounds of conversation, the more than 10 old geezers utilized their trump cards, and all of them emanated vast divine might as they withdrew their treasures. At this instant, a peerless torrent of might covered the heavens and the earth, and it crushed space as it smashed down. The banisher that bore the brunt of the impact wailed, and it was blasted flying fiercely. Boom! Even Chun Linkong, whose figure seemed to be on fire, was unable to resist the impact of this power, and his body was reduced to ashes. Lin Sun was about to be affected. Clang! The banisher that flew back abruptly let out an impassioned howl. It revolved in space, and then a circle of sword chi that was like a river of flames swept out. It easily crushed and incinerated all of those attacks into nothingness, causing them to disperse in space. This, the pupils of the dozen or so antiques in the distance constricted. Then he saw a figure appear in front of Lin Sun, completely surrounded by billions of flames. A mysterious law transformed into a god. Patterns flowed about, and it caused him to seem like a god of fire. Shockingly, this person was Chun Linkong. However, unlike before, the aura that suffused his body was terrifying to the point it caused those old geezers in the distance to feel a wave of pressure. In an instant, their expressions became unprecedentedly heavy because they'd recognized that this was Chun Linkong's main body. However, they'd never imagined that Chun Linkong's main body would actually be so terrifying. Clang! The banisher cheered as it fell into Chun Linkong's palm, and it emanated clear howls without end. Lin Sun's originally strained heart surged with excitement. At this moment, Chun Linkong was formidable to the point he was unable to estimate Chun Linkong's strength, and just looking at Chun Linkong gave him a feeling of ease. It seemed like he was fearless, even if the heavens and the earth collapsed and the world was destroyed. Young brother, watch carefully. Chun Linkong flicked his finger, and the banisher swiftly soared into the sky before slashing down. Bang! It was only a single strike, yet when it slashed down, the peerless might it revealed shook the figures of over 10 Eternal Realm old geezers to the point their bodies shook while their auras roiled, and it was uncomfortable to the point they almost coughed up blood. Kill! These old geezers naturally wouldn't allow themselves to be attacked passively, and they attacked in unison. This expanse of the starry sky was in disorder, and it fell into a chaotic state. Terrifying Tao arts and treasures swept over like a dense and violent storm. Chun Linkong slashed once more in an unhurried manner. Bang! The attacks of those old geezers suffered a heavy blow and were blasted into dispersal by this strike. Moreover, even their figures that were charging forward suffered an impact, and some of them even staggered back. He's accumulating strength with his sword in sight. We can't allow this to continue. Quickly stop him. One of the old geezers seemed to have seen through something and shouted loudly. The hearts of the other old geezers shook. All of them seemed as if they were fighting desperately, and their imposing auras grew even more terrifying. On the other hand, Chun Linkong's expression was calm as he stood towering on the spot. A myriad of strands of flames flowed throughout his body, and he didn't show any signs of retreating or dodging. Conversely, he attacked ceaselessly. Slash, slash, slash. The banisher slashed down incessantly from midair, and it blasted the attacks of all the old geezers to the point their vital blood roiled while their expressions changed incessantly. When Chun Linkong executed the 8th strike, some of those old geezers couldn't help but cough up blood. Some of their Tao weapons were damaged, and some were even injured by the sword chi. All of them were in extremely sorry states. However, they couldn't be bothered about all of this, because right at this moment, every single one of them noticed a strand of lethal danger surging through their bodies. It was like the end of the world was about to arrive, and it caused a chill to run down their spines. Since they'd attained the Eternal Realm, they weren't afraid of the changes in the world, and they were confident in their ability to overcome the calamity of an era. But at this moment, they sensed the aura of death. Let's go. They chose to teleport and dodge at the first possible moment. With the strength they possessed, if they fought desperately with all their might, then they felt that even formidable enemies at the same realm of cultivation wouldn't be able to stop them from escaping. However, right at this moment, in the sky above Creation City that was extremely far away, strands of the energy of the laws that seemed like a taboo surged out, and it was like a large net had been weaved together and instantly stretched throughout the starry sky. The energy of the river diagram's laws. All those old geezers felt their entire body stiffen. At this moment, they who were capable of disregarding the restraints and obstruction of space seemed as if they'd fallen into a swamp or were like fleeing fish that were frozen in water. Slash! Right at this moment, Chun Linkong executed the 9th strike with the banisher that he'd been accumulating strength for a long time. This strike seemed to be capable of splitting the heavens and the earth apart, destroying the ages, and slashing through space. This sword seemed to have the meaning of being free and unfettered for eternity and eternity. This strike was simple, but it was beyond the scope of the rules of the Great Way in this world. It didn't belong to this world. When this strike fell, the unparalleled sword light instantly drowned the starry sky, and everything turned white. Lin Sun's heart palpitated. If it weren't for the protection of Chun Lin Kong's power, just a wisp of aura that escaped from the strike could have killed him hundreds of times. No! An unwilling roar resounded, shaking the heavens and the earth. We've been trapped by the ruins of creation for so long, but we've never thought that we'd encounter a disaster today. Eternal? It's all fake. An angry roar came out, full of resentment. Eternal doesn't mean that we won't die. A helpless voice drifted in the air, full of bitterness. I hate it. All kinds of voices rang out, and then they stopped abruptly and disappeared one after another. When Lin Sun's vision became clear again, he saw that the starry sky had long been in a mess. There were twisted and cracked cracks everywhere, and the raging space turbulence swept through, making whimpering sounds like ghosts wailing and wolves howling. The more than 10 eternal realm existences had also disappeared. His eyes were filled with desolation. Dead. Lin Sun was shocked to the extreme. With my strength, I can't kill them. At most, I can only seriously injure them. After all, it's too difficult to kill those who have stepped into the eternal realm. Chun Lin Kong, who was beside him, restrained his aura and said softly, "However, with the help of the river diagram that my grandfather left in the divine city of creation, I have a chance to kill them this time." The river diagram. Lin Sun's heart shook fiercely. He remembered the black tortoise-shell treasure that the green-robed man left in the sky above the divine city of creation. However, he still couldn't understand it in his heart. The eternal realm was not afraid of the erosion of time, the vicissitudes of the world, and was strong enough to resist the 5 decay, Tao tribulations, and deal with the destruction of an era. What kind of supreme existence was this? But such an existence could also die. There is no one in this world who can't die. Even those who have attained the eternal realm and are immortal will be attacked by the 5 decay, Tao tribulations, killed by the great silence, lifeless tribulation, and obliterated by the dark hand hiding behind the scenes. When Chun Lin Kong said this, he seemed to realize something and couldn't help but sigh. After using the power of my original body this time, I can no longer stay in the divine ruins of creation. Otherwise, I will be attacked and imprisoned by the invisible force around the divine ruins of creation by the dark hand. His voice revealed a trace of depression. Although he killed a group of eternal realm existences, he lost the opportunity to stay in the divine ruins of creation, which made him feel a little unwilling. This was one of the reasons why he was unwilling to use his original body before. Lin Sun couldn't understand Chun Lin Kong's thoughts and said, Senior Weiyang and the others are still fighting. Should we go to rescue them?" Chun Lin Kong smiled and said, "Why? Aren't you in a hurry to leave?" Lin Sun said seriously, "Saving people is the most important thing. Everything else is not important." Chun Lin Kong patted Lin Sun on the shoulder and said, "Your temper is very much to my liking. Since you have forced me to use my original body, I naturally can't let it go so easily." As he spoke, he teleported with Lin Sun. In a few breaths, they had returned to the divine ruins of creation along the original path. But to Lin Sun's surprise, in the starry sky, the battle of Wuyang, Longxiang, Xingjia, and Dark Blood Underworld Emperor had just come to an end when they arrived. The Dharma images of the eternal realm were all destroyed. Chun Lin Kong seemed to realize something and couldn't help but smile bitterly. He let out a long sigh and said, "Everyone, why did you also use your original bodies? In this case, there is only one way left for you in the future. P.S. Additional updates are sent. Please guarantee the monthly tickets." Chapter 29:15. Hearing Chun Lin Kong's sigh, Wuyang, Xingjia, and the other powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm smiled. "We've been trapped here for a long time. Even if we're trapped here again, it won't make any difference." Wuyang said, "On the contrary, we have to thank Brother Chun for your guidance. If you hadn't led the way, how could we have achieved what we have today in the ruins of fate?" "That's right. There are gains and losses in the Tao of choice. We've already proven eternity and don't care about these things anymore. Long Xiang also said loudly. The opponent has already used his power. If we still hesitate, we won't be able to break through today's situation. Xing Jia said gently. Looking at the expressions of the other powerful figures, they were quite calm and indifferent. Chen Linkong smiled bitterly again and said, Fine, fine. Senior, what's going on? Lin Sun, who had been watching all this, couldn't help but feel puzzled. Chen Linkong thought for a while and told the cause of the matter. A long time ago, Chen Linkong led the way to the ruins of fate with a group of powerful figures of the ancient Desolation realm to find a secluded cultivation place called the Great Ming Era. Although the cultivation of these powerful figures of the ancient Desolation realm improved by leaps and bounds in the following years, they became the same as the cultivators of other eras and could no longer leave the ruins of fate. According to Chen Linkong's deduction, this was the power produced by the invisible rule power that the mastermind had covered the ruins of fate. There was only one way to fight against this kind of power, prove eternity, and resolve the great silence fatality disaster. Speaking of this, Chen Linkong said, before this disaster is resolved, the true body must not be exposed. Otherwise, the invisible rule power covering the ruins of fate will definitely capture its aura. In this way, if we successfully resolve this disaster in the future, we can't leave unless we have the ability to fight against the invisible rule power of the ruins of fate. Hearing this, Lin Sun finally understood and couldn't help saying, in other words, if Senior Wu Yang and the others want to leave in the future, this is the only way? Chen Linkong nodded yes. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little guilty and said, It started because of me. I didn't expect to ruin your plan. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Wu Yang. Before we resolve the great silence lifeless tribulation, we have no intention of leaving. I don't know how long it will take to truly resolve the great silence lifeless tribulation, so you don't have to feel indebted for this matter. Xing Jia smiled and said, That's right. Even if you comprehend the power of the origin of creation, not everyone can truly resolve the great silence lifeless tribulation. It's clearly too early to talk about the final way out. You've already done them a great favor. Chen Linkong said softly, If you hadn't comprehended the Fortune Star Dome's profundities and become the master of the Fortune Divine City, they wouldn't have had the chance to enter the city to comprehend the profundities of the Fortune origin source. Exactly. Many powerful figures of the ancient Desolation realm smiled and nodded. Lin Sun felt much better and said, Don't worry, seniors. I'll definitely come to the ruins of fate again and help you get out of here. His voice was resolute. Of course you'll have to come back in the future. You're the master of the Fortune Divine City. In the future, I'm afraid you'll have to take away the river diagram. Chen Linkong looked at Lin Sun meaningfully. Lin Sun nodded. Since the predicament has been broken, there's no time to lose. I'll send you off first. Chen Linkong looked at Wu Yang and the others. Will you come back, Brother Chen? Long Xiang asked. Of course, I'll at least drink with you again. Chen Linkong smiled. Then, he turned around and left with Lin Sun. Everyone, let's go to the Fortune Divine City. Wu Yang watched them disappear into the vast starry sky and said softly, My young friend, take good care of the Sword of Fate. It can be moved from any place in the outside world to the ruins of fate. It's a rare treasure. You may need to use it the next time you come here. Chen Linkong warned Lin Sun on the way. Lin Sun nodded and asked a question in his heart. Why do you have to leave the ruins of fate after using your original body? Chen Linkong said, Although the power of the mastermind can't kill me, it's not difficult to trap me in the ruins of fate. If I don't leave now, it won't be easy for me to leave in the future. As for Wu Yang and the others, they haven't really solved the great silence fatal disaster. Otherwise, they could also leave at this time. Alas, in the final analysis, the power of the mastermind is too strong. Chen Linkong's voice revealed a trace of helplessness. Then where do you plan to go after leaving the ruins of fate? Lin Sun asked. The ruins of wonders. Chen Linkong said, Although I don't know where it is, I have some clues. As long as I probe carefully, I should be able to find it. Speaking of this, Chun Ling Kong said, by the way, the one who left these clues is Golden Cicada. This person has a deep relationship with your master, the master of the square inch. If I'm not wrong, Golden Cicada is very likely to go to the ruins of wonders. Lin Sun said, Senior, in your opinion, if my master, the master of the square inch, didn't meet with misfortune, would he also go to the ruins of wonders? Chun Ling Kong shook his head. It's hard to say. Your master's enemy is in the ninth heaven. No matter where he appears in the future, it won't be strange. On the contrary, after returning to the eternal world, you should seize the time to cultivate. If I'm not wrong, the disaster of the change of era is very likely to come within 1,000 years. Lin Sun's heart shook fiercely. The disaster of the change of era. Did this mean that the current Lingwu era would be destroyed after 1,000 years? Lin Sun shuddered. Of course, there are many variables this time. If such a disaster really happens, it is bound to be different from the past. But no matter what, you have to be prepared in advance. Chun Ling Kong warned seriously. Lin Sun took a deep breath and nodded. 1,000 years. It was enough for him to seek the cultivation of the eternal realm. My little friend, I will send you here. In the end, Chun Ling Kong stopped in a vast starry sky. With a wave of his sleeve, a vortex-like portal emerged quietly. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Go quickly. This space-time tunnel leading to the eternal world won't last for long. Chun Ling Kong said with a smile. Lin Sun nodded, stepped forward, and disappeared in the space-time tunnel. Chun Ling Kong stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking elegant like an immortal. 1 month later, the sixth heaven of the eternal world. Chaos Demon Sea. Lin Sun walked there. Many years ago, when he was still at the Zhu Xian Imperial Ancestor Realm, he came to the Chaos Demon Sea to search for Master Lu. It was also in the Chaos Demon Sea that Lin Sun obtained the Kuan Progenitor's life bone, a complete divine magnetic mountain, and met Elder Emolanshan, Li Chunjun, and the others of the ninth peak of the Yuan sect. Of course, he also met Master Lu. Now, he was already at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm and could break through to the Nirvana God realm at any time. When he returned to the Chaos Demon Sea, his state of mind was completely different. This place was still as chaotic and turbulent as before. There were killings and bloody things happening everywhere. Lin Sun didn't care about it. He was like a passerby, glancing at it coldly and then hurrying away. After spending a day, Lin Sun saw the Southern Sea Divine Island in the distance. It was on this island that Lin Sun found Master Lu. According to Lin Sun's speculation, after the Luo family moved from Dragon's Pine Divine Mountain, they most likely lived in seclusion here. Because of this, he didn't immediately return to the Yuan sect after returning from the Ruins of Fortune. Instead, he planned to find the Luo family and settle down as parents. Before he set foot on the Southern Sea Divine Island, Lin Sun's divine sense sensed that something was wrong. There were several extremely powerful auras on the Southern Sea Divine Island. It was obvious that they belonged to the Nirvana God realm cultivators. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and directly flew over. Stop! Before Lin Sun could reach the island, a gray-robed man with a sword on his back teleported over and blocked his path. Who are you? What are you doing here? His eyes were like lightning as he placed his hands behind his back. His aura was so powerful that it could blot out the sky. It was obvious that he was an old monster who had been in the Nirvana God realm for many years. I'm looking for someone, Lin Sun said casually. Who are you looking for? The gray-robed man was expressionless. He was extremely domineering and aggressive. Lin Sun said, What are you doing here? I'm asking you a question. The gray-robed man's eyes surged with a terrifying divine light. You dare to be so arrogant when you're in the Nirvana God realm? Lin Sun laughed. You're right. You're indeed arrogant. Killing intent flashed in the gray-robed man's eyes as he drew his sword and slashed. Boom! The sword chi tore through the sky, surging with the terrifying law of immortality, raging and overbearing. Lin Sun's figure disappeared into thin air. The next moment, a fist fiercely hit the sword that was slashing down. The two collided, causing a terrifying wave of air to spread. The gray-robed man's figure staggered, and his face suddenly changed. Before he could stand firm, Lin Sun had already grabbed him, directly tearing through the void, breaking through the gray-robed man's resistance, and grabbed the gray-robed man's neck with unparalleled strength. One strike, crossing a great realm and capturing a nirvana god realm cultivator alive. This scene could be said to be shocking. If the whole Yuan sect saw this, they would probably not dare to imagine that Lin Sun, who had only left for more than 6 years, had already become so powerful. Arrogance will kill you. Tell me, who are you? Lin Sun said indifferently. The gray-robed man who was grabbed by Lin Sun's neck was now full of horror and disbelief. He couldn't figure out how he was captured alive by a heavenly longevity realm cultivator. This old man is Wen Tian Yuan, the supreme elder of the one clan in the sixth heaven. Hearing this, Lin Sun's past memories were evoked. The sixth heaven. There were many immortal emperor clans here, and they all regarded Lin Sun as a must-kill target. For example, the One clan, Hung clan, He clan, Hong clan, Zhu clan, etc. What are you doing here? Lin Sun asked again. I was ordered to search for traces of the Luo clan. Wen Tian Yuan seemed very honest. This answer made Lin Sun's heart sink. Whose orders? The orders of the 4 East Emperor clans in the seventh heaven. Speaking of this, Wen Tian Yuan seemed to have found something to rely on. He stared coldly at Lin Sun. Daoist friend, if you don't want to cause trouble for yourself, I advise you to quickly let me go. Otherwise, I'm afraid that disaster will befall you. Chapter 29:16. Hearing this threat, Lin Sun was not affected at all. He even wanted to laugh. The 4 Dongwang clans? They're just 4 major powers that are the dogs of the Dongwang clan. When he was in the Origin sect, he didn't even fear some of the hegemonic characters of the 8th heaven region. Why would he place the 4 major clans in his heart? In the distance, there was a sound of moving through the air. What happened? Not good. Wen Tian Yuan has been captured. Who is that person? Along with the voice, 5 figures whistled over. There were both men and women, and all of them possessed the aura of a nirvana god. When they saw Wen Tian Yuan, who was captured by Lin Sun, these old monsters were all surprised. In the 6th heaven, who dares to harm those who have set foot on the path of immortality? It's him, Lin Sun. An old man stared at Lin for a moment. He seemed to think of something, and his face suddenly changed. Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the rest of the people present could not remain calm. Over the past few years, Lin Sun had undoubtedly become the most eye-catching, peerless person in the entire Eternal True World. There were too many legendary stories about him, and every one of them was a world-shaking event. This made many old monsters in the world feel ashamed of their inferiority. For the great immortal emperor clans of the 6th heaven, Lin Sun is an unforgettable name, because they had regarded Lin Sun as a thorn in their side since a long time ago. They had formed an irreconcilable blood feud with Lin Sun in the Kiliakosm battlefield. Therefore, who wouldn't be shocked when they recognized Lin Sun? Just the title of the successor of the Yuan sect was enough to make them extremely fearful. Although they were afraid, they knew that Lin Sun and they were destined to be enemies, which could not be resolved at all. As a result, after seeing through Lin Sun's identity, they couldn't suppress the boiling, killing intent in their hearts. Lin Sun, this is the 6th heaven, not the Yuan sect. I advise you to release Wen Tian Yuan and leave quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today. An old man in a black robe said coldly. He exchanged glances with the others. With the strength of a group of nirvana gods, they were very confident that they could keep Lin Sun here. Bang! With a loud explosion, blood splattered everywhere. Wen Tian Yuan, whose neck was grasped by Lin Sun, was directly crushed. His body exploded and blood splashed out. The black-robed old man and the others were shocked by this bloody scene, and their faces turned ugly. Since I'm already here, why should I leave? Lin Sun said calmly. I think you're also searching for the Luo family under the order of the 4 East Royal clans. You already know the answer. At the mention of the 4 Dongwon clans, the 5 holiness of Nirvana realms present became much calmer. This made Lin Sun feel ridiculous. The 4 immortal emperor clans of the 7th heaven might be able to threaten many cultivators in the world, but how could they threaten him? Undoubtedly, for these big shots in the 6th heaven, the 4 great families of the Eastern Emperor are existences that they can only look up to. This was the problem of cognition. Lin Sun was not in the mood to explain to the opponent, and he didn't want to talk nonsense anymore. Whoosh! His figure flickered, and his 5 Taoist bodies appeared at the same time. Together with his true self, they charged forward. The battle broke out. The 5 holiness of Nirvana realm cultivators were still full of confidence, thinking that their realms were far superior to Lin Sun's. Moreover, they had the advantage of outnumbering Lin Sun, so they were confident that they could defeat Lin Sun. But as soon as the battle began, their expressions changed, and their fighting spirit wavered. After a while, bang, 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 with a muffled sound, the 5 holiness of Nirvana realms were suppressed one by one, seriously injured and dying. Lin Sun put away his 5 Taoist bodies, walked forward calmly, and began to search their souls. Soon he understood the ins and outs of the matter. As early as 6 years ago, many immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven received an order from the 4 Dongwon clans, asking them to search for the whereabouts of the Luo clan in the 6th heaven. Over the years, these great forces of the 6th heaven sent out various forces to search the world. It was only recently that they found some clues, inferring that the Luo clan was very likely to be hiding in this chaos demon sea. Therefore, these old monsters all went out to search. Who would have thought that before they could find the whereabouts of the Luo clan, they would meet Lin Sun? After understanding this, Lin Sun's eyes also became cold. He was sure that although the order to search for the Luo clan came from the 4 Dongwon clans, they must be acting on orders. The real mastermind behind this was most likely the Dongwon clan, and the purpose of doing so was nothing more than to threaten Lin Sun with the lives of the Luo clan. I will settle accounts with you one by one in the future. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! The 5 Nirvana realm powerhouses who were suppressed instantly turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. The Nirvana realm was divided into 3 stages: early, middle, and late. In these Nirvana realm existences that Lin Sun encountered this time, the strongest one was only at the middle Nirvana realm. Moreover, the power of the immortal laws they controlled was mostly within the scope of the 9th grade of the Earth rank. As a result, the combat power they possessed was completely different from those Nirvana realm existences who controlled the 9th grade of the Heaven rank immortal laws. In short, on the path of immortality, there were only 2 factors that affected one's combat power. One was the level of one's cultivation. The other was the level of the immortal laws they controlled. A Nirvana realm existence who controlled the Earth rank immortal laws was destined to be no match for an expert of the same realm who controlled the Heaven rank immortal laws. Lin Sun was completely different. His cultivation was only at the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm, but he had the foundation of an immortal supreme that could be said to be heaven-defying. And the immortal laws he controlled were tempered from the Nirvana realm order, and even exceeded the scope of the 9th grade of the Heaven rank. Under such circumstances, it was not difficult for him to surpass a realm and suppress a group of Nirvana realm existences who controlled the Earth rank immortal laws. After sorting out the spoils of war, Lin Sun headed towards the depths of the Southern Sea Divine Island. When Lin Sun arrived at the entrance of the Mi Luo Grotto Heaven with familiarity, he could not help but feel refreshed. The Mi Luo Grotto Heaven was a force that Master Lu established when he was dormant in the Chaos Demon Sea. Its entrance was in front of a weapon shop. Back then, Lin Sun had to spend a lot of effort to find this place. And now, in Lin Sun's eyes, the entrance of the Mi Luo Grotto Heaven was shrouded by an invisible restrictive power. It was extremely mysterious. Not to mention ordinary people, Even those with the path of immortality would not be able to detect it. Without a doubt, this restrictive formation was the work of Master Lu, and the fact that the restrictive formation was still present undoubtedly meant that the Luo clan was most likely hiding in it. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun walked straight forward and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The secret realm where the Mi Luo Grotto Heaven was located was still as quiet as before. The sky was vast, the land was vast, and the scenery was picturesque. Ooh! As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, a thunderous shout rang out. Immediately after, Lu Boya's figure appeared out of thin air. When he saw the person who came, his pupils couldn't help but widen, and he said in pleasant surprise, "So it's you, boy. Long time no see, Mr. Lu. You look even better than before." Lin Sun cupped his hands with a smile. He was also very excited. "Elder Lu, could it be that the enemy has come? Sons of the Luo family, come with me." A wave of shouts resounded in the distance, and then numerous dazzling streaks of light whistled over. All of them were filled with murderous intent, as they thought that enemies had arrived. But when they saw who it was, they were all stunned. "Patriarch, it's young Master Lin." An old servant excitedly slapped his thigh and shouted. "Nonsense, of course I know." Luo Xiao, the patriarch of the clan, who was also Lin Sun's grandfather, laughed at this moment, and his voice spread through the sky. Beside him were Luo Qingheng and a group of familiar faces, all of whom were beaming with joy. Lin Sun's arrival really surprised and delighted them. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart. Everyone was safe and sound, which made him feel completely relieved. That night, the Mi Luo paradise was abnormally bustling with noise and excitement, and a grand banquet was held. When she saw Luo Qing, when she saw Lin Wenjing, Luo Zhao's tears flowed uncontrollably, and she repeatedly lost her composure. After so many years, she was really too excited to see her most beloved daughter again. Lu Boya and Luo Qingheng were also overwhelmed with emotions, and each of them sighed with emotion. Lin Sun smiled as he looked at this scene, and his heart was also filled with joy and comfort. Being able to reunite his mother with his family had also resolved a knot in his heart. After staying in the Mi Luo paradise for 2 days, Lin Sun departed. He already knew that Master Lu had already made preparations. He had been laying down a forbidden formation and a way of retreat for the past few years. In order to prevent enemies from coming to the Mi Luo paradise, he had already laid down an inescapable net inside and outside the Mi Luo paradise. Even if a Nirvana realm expert came, they wouldn't be able to discover it. Moreover, Lu Boya told Lin Sun that if there was any danger, the Luo family could also use an ancient teleportation formation to retreat and instantly arrive at one of the 3 forbidden areas of Chaos Demon Sea, the Aurora Cave. Lu Boya had already inquired about a forbidden area in the Aurora Cave. As long as one hid in it, even a transcendent realm expert would find it extremely difficult to break in. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt more at ease when he left. However, he still left behind some treasures, such as the token given by Sky Origin Pavilion Master Yin Ji. It contained Yin Ji's will avatar and could be used 3 times, once every month. Lin Sun had used it once before, which meant that this token could still be used twice. In addition, Lin Sun also left behind some Tao soldiers, divine materials, order power, and so on that he had collected over the years. By doing this, he only hoped that his parents, Lu Boya, uncle, and grandfather would have more means to protect themselves. Parting was always sad. His parents' solicitous exhortations and the elders' meticulous care made Lin Sun's heart filled with emotions. But he still had to leave in the end. He still had many things to do on the Great Path. However, Lin Sun didn't immediately seek revenge on the Sixth Heaven's immortal emperor clans. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he couldn't expose his identity. Otherwise, the Shaman sect, Zen sect, the Eighth Heaven's 10 great immortal giants, and other behemoths would immediately launch a terrifying attack and deal him a fatal blow. Just like in the past, just because he wanted to go to the ruins of fortune, even Xian Failing was worried and personally escorted him. It was conceivable that once they knew that Lin Sun appeared in the Sixth Heaven, it would attract monstrous killing. But not taking revenge now didn't mean that he would forget. In the future, sooner or later, Lin Sun would completely settle the past hatred. Half a month later, Yuan Realm. There was a fluctuation of light rain in the transmission ancient formation, and a tall figure walked out. The successor who guarded the transmission ancient formation looked up and shouted excitedly, "It's Deputy Deacon Lin. Deputy Deacon Lin is back." Lin Sun looked up and saw that the other party was not the successor of one of the enemy forces, so he nodded with a smile and left. After leaving for more than 6 years, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel like a lifetime had passed since he returned. On this day, the 3 pavilions and the 9 peaks of Yuan's sect were alarmed, just because Lin Sun was back. P.S. Do you want to continue adding updates tonight? How about ensuring the monthly votes and helping the chosen ones to enter the top 20 of the monthly votes? Chapter 29:17. In Yuan's sect, there were often descendants who went out to practice, but most of them didn't cause much noise when they returned to the sect. Lin Sun was different. In the past few years, because of Lin Sun's existence, too many things happened in Yuan's sect. In the entrance examination, Lin Sun entered the 9th peak as the first place. After that, he became inherited disciple, a disciple of Yuan Kong Pavilion, and a deputy deacon of Yuan Kong Pavilion in the shortest time. Every promotion broke the previous records of Yuan's sect. If that was all, Lin Sun could only be regarded as an extremely brilliant descendant of Yuan's sect. But in the last cultivation discussion of the 9 peaks, Lin Sun suppressed the geniuses of witchcraft, Zen sect, and the 10 immortal giants one after another, leading the way and winning a rare honor for Yuan's sect. After this, Lin Sun's prestige had been deeply rooted in the hearts of Yuan's sect. Even some big shots who maintained a neutral attitude praised him and treated him with special respect. It could be said that these past deeds had made Lin Sun's position in Yuan's sect extremely special, and he was deeply supported by most descendants. Therefore, after 6 years, the news of Lin Sun's return caused a sensation in Yuan's sect. This was the influence. By the time Lin Sun returned to his blessed place, many people had come to visit him. Mo Lan Shan, the elder of the 9th peak, Li Chunjun, Huang Muji, and so on, Feng Qixi, Drifting Cloud Feng, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and so on. For a moment, Lin Sun's place was very lively. However, those who came to visit didn't stay for long. They probably knew that many people wanted to see Lin Sun today, so it was not appropriate to stay for a long time. It wasn't until dusk that Lin Sun finally had some free time. Phew, with a long sigh of relief, Lin Sun lay on the soft couch, took out the wine gourd, and drank it. He was completely relaxed. In Yuan's sect, he really didn't have to worry about any danger. Although there were many twists and turns in this trip to the ruins of fate, he successfully achieved his goal. His parents had settled down in the Luo clan, and Xia Ji was now by his side. He didn't have to worry about whether she would leave him in the future. In addition, the experience in the ruins of fate also benefited Lin Sun a lot. First of all, mastering the cultivation system of the last 100 eras would bring him immeasurable benefits for his future cultivation. As Chun Linkong said, only by thoroughly understanding the cultivation system of the last 100 eras could he clearly know how powerful the peak realm of each era was. From this, it could be inferred how powerful the culprit behind the scenes was to be able to cause the civilizations of those eras to suffer such a calamity. It could be inferred that how powerful the people behind the scenes were to cause the destruction of these eras. To put it simply, if he absorbed the strengths of the various eras, he would definitely be able to rise above them in the future. Besides that, he was already the master of Divine Creation City. So when he attained eternity in the future and encountered the grand silence lifespan tribulation, he could choose to head to Divine Creation City to comprehend the quintessence of creation and resolve this tribulation. Chun Linkong had also said that the next time he returned, he might be able to take the river diagram with him. Chun's sect and the Sect Sun's clan, he would sect the River Sun of Sect. A few years ago, Lin Sun already had the foundation to prove his Tao in the Nirvana God realm. The reason why he didn't prove his Tao in the Fortune Divine City was because he was suppressed by the power of laws in the city. When he became the sex lord, the situation had changed. There was no time for him to enter the Nirvana realm. It's not too late to enter the Nirvana realm after I get the position of deacon. Lin Sun thought for a moment and made a decision. To become a deacon, he must first have the cultivation of the late stage of heavenly longevity realm, and then complete a task assigned by the vice pavilion master of Yuanqing Pavilion. Finally, he could challenge one of the 12 deacons of Yuan Kong Pavilion and replace him. Lin Sun didn't intend to wait any longer and decided to do it tomorrow. At night, Deacon Tao Lung came to visit. I came here to visit you and ask about your experience in the ruins of fate, and then report it to Vice Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling. Tao Long went straight to the point. You don't know how much Vice Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling worried about your safety during the 6 years you were away. He was afraid that you would be intercepted by those enemies on your way back. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart and said, "Well, I'll go with you to visit Vice Pavilion Master Xian." Tao Lung shook his head quickly. "Don't go now. Vice Pavilion Master Xian is in a bad situation now." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "What happened?" Tao Lung looked serious. "In the 2nd year after you left, people from the 9th Heaven region came." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. "Eternal God Clan?" "Yes, 2 clansmen of the Eternal God Clan came this time." Tao Lung said, "His name is Yuan Shilio. He's in the transcendent realm Great Perfection. When he came to our Yuan school, he held a decree from the leader. The decree said that he would be appointed as a guest elder." Lin Sun frowned. "I remember that our sect has never set up such a position." Tao Lung explained, "Of course, but the decree Yuan Shilio held was written by the hierarch himself. It can't be falsified." After the negotiation of the big shots of the sect, a new position of guest elder was added, which is equivalent to the vice pavilion master, but it doesn't have real power. Lin Sun secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, "As long as he doesn't have real power, it's nothing more than a decoration." Tao Lung shook his head. "That's not necessarily true. Yuan Shilio comes from the 9th Heaven and is from the Eternal God Clan. Even our Yuan sect has to be courteous to such a noble character. If he wants to intervene in something, under normal circumstances, no one will refuse." Lin Sun pondered. "Who is the 2nd person?" Tao Lung said, "Yuan Changtian, the 9th son of the Eternal God Clan's patriarch. He is a natural god son. His talent is terrifying, and his foundation is abnormal. He has the cultivation of Nirvana realm intermediate. As soon as he arrived in Yuan's sect, he caused a great sensation. There was also a look of amazement on his face. However, to Tao Lung's surprise, Lin Sun's expression didn't change, as if he didn't care at all. Lin Sun didn't explain. He couldn't tell Tao Lung that as early as in the ruins of fate, the number of God's sons who died in his hands had already exceeded 100, right? Those God sons have the backing of various major God clans, and those God clans also have eternal realm experts. In terms of foundation, they are not necessarily inferior to the eternal God clan of the 9th Heaven. If it weren't for this experience, Lin Sun might also be surprised by the arrival of Yuan Changtian. After all, he is a God's son from the 9th Heaven. But after the experience in the ruins of fate, Lin Sun really couldn't be surprised. This is the change of vision, the change of mentality. Tao Lung lowered his voice and said, "Don't underestimate this person. According to Deputy Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling, Yuan Shilio's real purpose in coming here is to act as Yuan Changtian's protector. And Yuan Changtian's purpose is very likely the same as yours, to seize the position of Yuanqing Pavilion Master." Hearing this, Lin Sun showed a serious expression, raising his eyebrows. "He is a godson of the 9th Heaven. He also plans to get involved? Brother, don't underestimate the position of Pavilion Master. Anyone who can become a Pavilion Master has the foundation and strength to step into the eternal realm. After becoming a Pavilion Master, even if they go to the 9th Heaven, they can be on an equal footing with the great figures of the Eternal God Clan." Tao Lung seemed to know a lot of secrets and pointed out to Lin Sun, I don't know what the ninth heaven looks like. After all, I have never been there. But as an old man who entered the sect tens of thousands of years earlier than you, I have heard a lot of news related to the ninth heaven over the years. What news? Lin Sun asked with interest. Tao Lung sneered. This is a long story. You only need to know that the position of the pavilion master of our Yuan sect is also very popular in the ninth heaven. So, the purpose of Yuan Shiliu and Yuan Changtian coming here is to obtain the position of Yuan Qing pavilion master. Lin Sun pondered. This is exactly what I came here to tell you. Tao Lung said, although Yuan Changtian's talent is heaven-defying, he is not domineering at all. On the contrary, he gives people a sense of modesty and peace like a spring breeze. He treats others flawlessly. Moreover, every single action of his follows the rules, and no one could find any fault with him. Now, he has already passed through the various tests with his own ability, and has become one of the 9 elders of our Sky Origin Pavilion. Elder? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, an elder in the Nirvana God Realm Intermediate. Tao Lung said seriously, this is indeed amazing. Within the Yuan religion's 3 pavilions, even the weakest among them had to possess the cultivation of a Nirvana god at least. However, there were only 9 elders in each pavilion. As a result, after countless years, those who held the position of an elder mostly possessed the cultivation of a transcendent realm. They have at least the cultivation base of Nirvana God realm perfection. This kind of situation could be seen everywhere among the elders of the 3 pavilions. Yuan Changtian was able to win the position of an elder in the Nirvana God realm Intermediate, which undoubtedly proves that his combat power is extremely heaven-defying. Who replaced him as an elder? Lin Sun asked thoughtfully. It's Elder Nie Qinghu, a Nirvana God realm perfection expert. He has been an elder for more than 13,000 years. Elder Nie Qinghu is also one of the right-hand men of Xian Failing. When Tao Lung spoke up to hear, a trace of gloominess appeared between his brows. Lin Sun said thoughtfully, did Yuan Changtian deliberately choose Elder Nie Qinghu as his opponent? Or does he have an unusual relationship with the top 10 immortal forces? Tao Lung glanced at Lin Sun in surprise and said, Brother, your eyes are really sharp. You can see the problem at a glance. He continued, you're right. Ever since Yuan Changtian joined the Yuan sect, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and the other immortal leaders of the 10 great immortal realm experts were overjoyed. They didn't even try to hide their goodwill toward Yuan Changtian. According to Xian Failing's deduction, Yuan clan of Eternal God Clan has already contacted the immortal forces behind Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and other big shots in order to help Yuan Changtian get the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Hearing this, Lin Sun completely understood. He couldn't help but sneer, dragging the divine son of Eternal God Clan into this. What a good plan. P.S. Thank you for your tips and monthly tickets. I'll give you more updates. Chapter 2918. Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder. He asked, there are only about 90 years left before Pavilion Head Yu Beihai attains the Eternal Realm. Is Yuan Changtian so confident that he can attain the Transcendent Realm and fight for the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Head? If one wanted to fight for the position of Pavilion Head, he must first become a deputy pavilion head. Among the 9 deputy pavilion heads of Yuan's sect, which of them was not a terrifying existence in the transcendent realm great perfection? Moreover, Yuan Changtian was only in the middle stage of Nirvana realm. Tao Lung said, Yuan Changtian must be well prepared if he dares to come here. Besides, there's still 90 years left. Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun with a strange expression. What's more, compared to Yuan Changtian, it will be more difficult for you to win the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Head. Lin Sun was in the heavenly longevity realm great perfection. In terms of cultivation alone, he was much weaker than Yuan Changtian. Well, that's true. Lin Sun laughed. Of course, I also know that you have the foundation of Immortal Supreme, which is completely different from others. If you really want to compete, you are not necessarily inferior to Yuan Changtian. Tao Long seemed to be worried that Lin Sun would be hurt, so he comforted, according to Deputy Pavilion Head Xian Failing, he hopes that you can concentrate on cultivation after returning to Yuan's sect and improve your strength as soon as possible. Whether it is him or some other big shots in Yuan's sect, they are not willing to give Yuan Changtian the opportunity to ascend to the throne of Pavilion Head. Lin Sun nodded. Suddenly, the power of the restriction in the cave residence rippled. Lin Sun opened the restriction, and suddenly a clear and peaceful voice came. Is Taoist brother Lin Sun here? Tao Lung's pupils suddenly shrank, and he seemed to be extremely surprised. He immediately transmitted a voice message. It's Yuan Changtian. I didn't expect him to come to you. Yuan Changtian? Lin Sun was stunned. This was the first day he returned, and the Divine Son from the Ninth Heaven Divine clan took the initiative to come to him. What was he going to do? I'll go and have a look. While thinking, Lin Sun got up and walked out of the cave residence. Outside the cave residence stood a tall man in white. His long black hair was loose, his face was fair and delicate, and his eyes were as clear as stars. He was clean and unadorned, with only a round and translucent cyan jade hanging on his waist. He was extraordinarily handsome, as clear as jade. Upon seeing Lin Sun, he smiled and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. I'm Yuan Changtian, an elder of Yuan Kong Pavilion. I've come to pay a visit to you. I don't deserve to be called a fellow practitioner. Elder Yuan can just call me Lin Sun. Lin Sun said casually. I've long heard of Brother Lin's great name. Now that I've met you, you really do live up to your reputation. Yuan Changtian smiled warmly. I'm sorry that I came here so abruptly. Lin Sun also smiled and said, since we are both members of the Yuan sect, there is no need to be rude. I heard that Elder Yuan is from the Ninth Heaven and has a noble background. I think you will definitely shine in the sect in the future. Yuan Changtian smiled bitterly and sighed. Being born in the god race isn't necessarily something to be envious of. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't stay in the Ninth Heaven, I wouldn't have come to the Yuan sect. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. It seems that Elder Yuan has other difficulties? Yuan Changtian smiled and said, who in this world doesn't have difficulties behind their backs? I'm here to meet you, Brother Lin, and also to talk to you about something. Elder Yuan, please speak frankly. Lin Sun said. Yuan Changtian stopped smiling and said thoughtfully, when I came to the Yuan sect, I had already heard some of Brother Lin's deeds. I also know that Brother Lin seems to be determined to win the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. But I have an important task for the sect, but I have to fight for the position of Pavilion Master. Brother Lin, what do you think I should do? Lin Sun laughed. If I advise you to give up, will you listen? Yuan Changtian was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled bitterly. Brother Lin, if I could give up, I would have given up long ago. Then fight for it. Lin Sun said casually. Yuan Changtian sighed softly, but I don't want to become enemies with Brother Lin. One more friend is better than one more enemy. That's why I took the liberty to come here and talk to you about this matter. Lin Sun smiled. You don't want me to give up, do you? Unexpectedly, Yuan Changtian said seriously, Brother Lin, if you are willing to take a step back, I can promise you that I will repay you generously in the future. For example, I can help Brother Lin resolve the hatred between you and the immortal giants. I can also help Brother Lin go to the Ninth Heaven for cultivation. If Brother Lin is willing, I can even recommend Brother Lin to my Minamoto clan for cultivation. With Brother Lin's foundation and strength, you will definitely be valued. Finally, Yuan Changtian solemnly added, of course, as long as I can do it, I will promise you everything. Lin Sun asked, really? Yuan Changtian smiled and said, a monarch never goes back on his words. I only have one request, Lin Sun said. Yuan Changtian's spirit was lifted. Brother Lin, please go ahead. Lin Sun said, Elder Yuan, you'd better stop thinking about the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. It doesn't belong to you. After saying that, Lin Sun turned around and walked into the cave residence, leaving Yuan Changtian alone. Yuan Changtian was silent for a moment, but he didn't look angry at all. Instead, he cupped his hands towards Lin Sun's cave residence and said, I understand Brother Lin's mind. Goodbye. He turned around and left. In the cave residence, Tao Lung asked immediately, "What is Yuan Changtian doing here?" Lin Sun casually told him what had happened just now. Tao Lung couldn't help laughing angrily. What does he think the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master is? A commodity that can be exchanged? Lin Sun said casually, "In my opinion, with his character, it seems that he is here to negotiate terms on the surface. But in fact, he is just testing me with this matter." Testing? Yes, to test whether I am determined to win the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Tao Lung was surprised. "So, he regards you as his #1 enemy." Lin Sun joked, "Should I feel honored?" Tao Lung was amused and said, "However, you really can't be careless. The more humble and shrewd a guy is, the more difficult it is to deal with him. In order to help him ascend to the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master, I'm afraid those big shots in the sect who hate you will not be indifferent in the next period of time." Lin Sun nodded. After talking for a while, Tao Lung left in a hurry. Lin Sun began to meditate. In the night, in the cave world where Fu Wenli, the deputy pavilion master, lived. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, Dongwang Qing, Tang Xiu, and other big shots gathered. Lin Sun has returned. According to our previous agreement, we should fully support Yuan Changtian to ascend to the position in any case. Fu Wenli spoke indifferently. This also means that everyone should sharpen their eyes in the following years. We must fiercely suppress this kid, and if there's a chance to beat him down, then we absolutely can't miss it. Everyone nodded in agreement. However, if he concentrates on cultivation and ignores the affairs of the world, we can't do anything to him. Tang Xiu, who was as thin as firewood, frowned. "If there is no chance, create one." Fu Wenli said expressionlessly. As long as he wants to seek promotion, he must face all kinds of tests. In these tests, he can always find a chance. After a pause, he continued to say, "Moreover, the immortal Tao battle initiated by the witchcraft sect's ancestral court will begin in the 10-direction devil territory in another 10 years. At that time, it might be the best time to defeat this brat." Immortal Tao battle. The big shots present were stunned at first, and then their eyes lit up. Every 3,000 years, the ancestral court of witchcraft would launch an immortal Tao battle. At that time, the 4 ancestral courts would each select 5 successors who set foot on the immortal road to participate in the battle. The location of the immortal Tao battle was located in the 10 devil territory. It was a strange and ominous place of great danger, and numerous unimaginable dangers were hidden there. This is a good idea. If Lin Sun suffers in the 10 devil territory, he can't blame anyone. Qi Xiaoyan laughed. Qi Wen also laughed. The ancestral court of witchcraft regards Mind Mountain as its enemy and hates the descendants of Mind Mountain the most. If Lin Sun participates in the battle, I'm afraid that the ancestral court of witchcraft will not miss the opportunity to attack him without any arrangements. It's too early to say this. After all, there are still 10 years. During this period, I'll have to trouble you," Fu Wenli said in a deep voice. Everyone readily agreed. Young master has seen Lin Sun? In the same night, in Yuan Changtian's cave residence, when seeing Yuan Changtian return, Yuan Shiliu, who had been waiting there, stood up to greet him. Yuan Shilu was like an old man with one foot in the grave. His beard and hair were sparse, his eyes turbid, and the wrinkles on his skinny face were like ravines. But he was a veritable transcendent realm, great perfection. Moreover, he came from the 9th heaven divine clan, and the power he possessed was far beyond ordinary. However, such a big shot seemed very respectful in front of Yuan Changtian, like a servant. "Uncle Shilio, I've already said that in Yuan school. Don't treat me like you treat me in the clan. From now on, you can just call me Changtian." Yuan Changtian said warmly. "No. Young master is the 9th son of the patriarch. Since you've arranged for this old servant to stay by your side, how can there be no rules?" Yuan Shilio shook his head. His surname was Yuan, but he called himself an old servant. Yuan Changtian sighed softly and said, "Well, it's up to you." Yuan Shilio smiled and invited Yuan Changtian to take a seat. Then he said, "Young master, you haven't answered this old servant's question yet." Yuan Changtian said, "I've seen him before. He looks peaceful on the outside, but he's very proud and opinionated. I'm afraid there's not much hope for him to give up the position of Yuanqing Pavilion Master." After hearing this, Yuan Shilio showed a kind smile and said, "Young master, don't worry. I'm afraid he won't live until then." Yuan Changtian was startled and frowned. "Uncle Shilio, this is Yuan school. Don't mess around." Yuan Shilio nodded with a smile and said, "If it's not necessary, this old servant won't make such a bad move. Young master, don't worry. I've already informed Fu, Winley, and others. They have promised to fully assist you in the next few years and fight for the position of Pavilion Master for you." Yuan Changtian smiled disapprovingly and said, "These are not important. On the way to fighting for the position of Pavilion Master, without Lin Sun, there are still some old guys. I won't pin all my hopes on others." In the end, there was a faint arrogance in the depths of his calm eyes. P.S. The second update will be done soon. Chapter 2919. The next morning, Yuanqing Pavilion. Deputy Deacon Lin is going to take the assessment for promotion to the position of deacon. We learn the purpose of Lin's visit. A disciple of Yuanqing Pavilion who was receiving Lin was stunned. "Yes, you can invite Deputy Head Fong Daoping here," Lin said. "Deputy Deacon Lin, please wait a moment." The disciple left in a hurry. Before long, Fong Daoping appeared and said with a strange look, "You just came back yesterday. Are you going to take the assessment today?" Lin said with a smile, "Senior, is there anything wrong?" Fong Daoping said, "No. You have reached the peak of Heaven Longevity Realm, so you're naturally qualified to seek the position of deacon." He paused for a moment and continued. "After the Dao discussion ended, I've already discussed it with the other Vice Pavilion Masters. We can cancel the completion of a sect assignment for your deacon test. This also means that what you have to face now is a challenge." Lin was stunned. "The sect task is canceled?" Fong Daoping said with a smile, "Last time you contributed to the sect in the Nine Peaks discussion and suppressed the successors of which cult and Zen cult. This contribution is far more than a sect task." "Then won't the others gossip?" Lin was a little worried. "Don't worry. No matter how much they hate you, they can't interfere in this matter." Fong Daoping said and asked, "Who are you going to challenge?" There were 12 deacons in Yuan Kong Pavilion. If Lin wanted to become a deacon, he had to defeat one of them and take his place. "Mu Qin." Lin said a name. Fong Daoping's eyes narrowed slightly. He is at the early stage of Nirvana realm, and now his cultivation has shown signs of breaking through to the middle stage. Among the 12 deacons of Yuan Kong Pavilion, his combat power is already in the top 5. And in his view, Lin Sun was only at the peak of Heaven Longevity Realm, which was a big realm lower than Mu Qin. It was obviously too risky to do so. "It's him." Lin Sun looked calm. Before coming here, he had thought about it carefully. It was not that he had to choose Mu Qin, but only a few of the 12 deacons were strong in the enemy forces. Mu Qin came from the Mu clan in the 8th heaven. For Lin Sun, he was undoubtedly a good candidate. "All right, I'll send someone to inform Mu Qin." Fong Daoping stopped trying to persuade him and started to take action. Only half a quarter of an hour later, a Yuanqing Pavilion disciple came to report. "Deacon Mu Qin is in seclusion and cannot accept the challenge at this time." Fong Daoping raised his brows and sneered. "I remember that he just came out of closed-door cultivation a while ago. Why is he in closed-door cultivation again? How could he not know that Mu Qin's action was very likely to avoid battle? But there was nothing Fong Daoping could do. He couldn't force Mu Qin out of seclusion. Since Deacon Mu Qin is in seclusion, let's get someone else." Lin was a little surprised, but he didn't care. It was not Lin Sun's face that the enemy avoided the battle. "Who?" Fong Daoping asked. "Dong Wang Wu." Upon hearing this name, Fong Daoping nodded and said, "Sure." Among the 12 deacons of the Sky Origin Pavilion, Dong Wang Wu was at the early stage of the Nirvana God realm. In terms of battle strength, he was even weaker than Mu Qin. Fong Daoping immediately sent a disciple to Dong Wang Wu's blessed abode. However, not long after, there was news. Dong Wang Wu was refining Taoist soldiers and couldn't go out for a while. This made Fong Daoping's face sink. Could it be that these guys have colluded with each other to do this on purpose? Don't they feel ashamed? Lin Sun didn't care much and said with a smile, they have important things to do. Even if they don't accept the challenge, it won't affect them much. However, if I want to know whether they have colluded or not, I can continue to try. Who's next? Fong Daoping asked. Lil Lingyi. Lin Sun said a name. Fong Daoping's pupils shrank. This person has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Nirvana God realm. He is more difficult to deal with than Mu Qin. Senior, don't worry, Lin Sun said. Fong Daoping thought for a moment and agreed. Not long after, a disciple of the Sky Origin Pavilion returned and said in a low voice, Deputy Pavilion Head Fong, Deacon Lil Lingyi is writing scriptures and has consumed too much of his mind. However, he didn't refuse the challenge. He just needs to wait for a year to recover his mind. Fong Daoping frowned. He has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Nirvana God realm, but he avoids the challenge. What a scandal! He had realized that these guys must have colluded long ago. Even if their cultivation was higher than Lin Sun's, they didn't intend to give Lin Sun a chance to challenge them. In this way, Lin Sun couldn't step on them. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he said indifferently, Senior, let's continue to change people. If there is no one from the Sky Origin Pavilion to accept the challenge, let's change the deacons of the Yuanshu Pavilion and the Yuanqing Pavilion. In the end, I will let the whole Yuan Church see whether these guys who collude with each other are shameless or not. Fong Daoping's eyes flashed, and he said, Among them, there are people in the peak of the Nirvana God realm. Are you sure you want to try? Lin Sun said, Senior, if I fight with the Blade of Time, can I cut down the opponent's cultivation in one fell swoop? Fong Daoping's expression became strange. You can do it if you take them by surprise. But now everyone in the Yuan Church knows that you have defeated Yu Fengzi of the Zen Church with the Blade of Time. It's hard to guarantee that they won't be on guard. It doesn't matter, as long as I can deal with them. Lin Sun thought in his heart that if they could guard against the Blade of Time, could they guard against the Gate of Exile? He had never revealed this forbidden divine ability before. No, it's too rash. It's better to choose some safe opponents to test first. If no one really accepts the challenge in the end, then we can make a decision. Fong Daoping pondered. Lin Sun nodded in agreement. Immediately, Fong Daoping ordered the disciples of the Yuanqing Pavilion to deliver the message. And in the following time, the news came back one after another. Deacon Yun Poyu is in closed-door training and can't accept the challenge. Deacon Gu Ling is refining a furnace of elixirs and has no time to be distracted. Deacon Qi Qianxiu, every challenge was rejected without exception. The reason was the same and nothing new. In the end, all the deacons of the Sky Origin Pavilion, the Yuanshu Pavilion, and the Yuanqing Pavilion refused to accept the challenge, except those who had reached the peak of the Nirvana God realm. Fong Daoping's face was completely gloomy. Although he knew that the other side had colluded, he still couldn't help but be angry when he saw such a scene. Lin Sun said thoughtfully, It seems that they intend to use all kinds of methods to prevent me from rising, so as to win more opportunities for Yuan Chanten. Lin Sun, in my opinion, this may be a conspiracy. Fong Daoping seemed to have realized something, and he said, Presently, most of those who are avoiding battle are at the intermediate stage of the Nirvana God realm. In the three pavilions, there are a few experts at the perfection stage of the Nirvana God realm amongst your enemies. I suspect that if you were to issue a challenge to them now, they would definitely agree at the first possible moment. After a pause, he said coldly, In this way, they will have enough confidence to defeat you. Even if you use the talent power of the Blade of Time, I'm afraid they have already been on guard and have a way to avoid it. If you fight head-on, how can you be a match for someone at the peak of the Nirvana God realm? Lin Sun also realized this, but he was not worried. If the Blade of Time didn't work, he still had the Gate of Exile and the 5 Tao forms. However, when he intended to do so, he was refused by Fong Daoping. It's too risky. It's not worth it at all. Fong Daoping said, if you want to be a deacon, you can also choose to be a deacon other than your enemies. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. In this case, how can I defeat them? It's impossible for me to kill them in this kind of challenge. Why should I be so stubborn? Fong Daoping asked. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and sighed softly. Well, he didn't want to expose all his trump cards in such a challenge. It was indeed not worth it, and it was easy for his opponent to see through him. Senior, according to the rules of the sect, if all the challengers avoid the challenge, what should we do? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Fong Daoping said, it's very simple. The time limit is 1 month. If no one accepts the challenge within a month, the challenger can take the place of anyone. Lin Sun nodded. Immediately, he thought of one thing. How did Yuan Changtian become an elder? Fong Dao casually said, Yuan Changtian's cultivation is at the mid-nirvana god stage. His foundation is heaven-defying, and his talent is shocking. When he defeated Elder Nie Qinghu, who is at the perfect nirvana god stage, he revealed an extremely shocking strength. In the end, there's only a small gap between him and Elder Nie Qinghu. Lin Sun suddenly understood. If he was at the middle stage of Nirvana realm, it wouldn't be difficult for him to defeat such an opponent. Then do you want to challenge other deacons? Fong Daoping asked. Lin Sun shook his head. I'm only interested in the positions occupied by those enemies. Speaking of this, he thought of something and said, Senior, give me 1 month. I'll come back to challenge them then. 1 month? Fong Daoping was a little confused. You'll know when the time comes. Lin Sun smiled slightly. On the same day, the news about Lin Sun's participation in the deacon assessment spread throughout the Yuan sect, causing a great sensation. Among the 3 pavilions, no one who was challenged by Deputy Deacon Lin dared to accept the challenge. Isn't it too cowardly? It's not cowardly. It's because they don't want to give Deputy Deacon Lin a chance at all. These deacons who refused to accept the challenge obviously colluded with each other and did it on purpose. That's the most despicable thing. In order to prevent Deputy Deacon Lin from being promoted, these old guys colluded with each other. Their means are a little despicable. Alas, since the arrival of the divine son Yuan Changtian, the situation in our Yuan sect has become delicate. Everyone in the Yuan sect was talking about it. When they heard the news, big shots like Xian Failing and Duge Yong all frowned. How could they not know that this was the arrangement of Fu Wenli and the other old guys? As for Fu Wenli and the others, they couldn't help but laugh after hearing the news. They were in a good mood. Since Lin Sun entered the Yuan sect, it was the first time that they had seen Lin Sun suffer such a setback. The only pity was that Lin Sun didn't challenge the peak of Nirvana realm in their camp. Otherwise, there would be a bigger show to watch. He just came back yesterday, but today he's seeking the position of deacon. Is he stimulated by my arrival? Yuan Changtian couldn't help but feel surprised when he heard the news, and then he laughed. The more anxious Lin Sun was, the more it proved that Yuan Changtian had become the biggest threat in his mind, which made him feel pressured. Under such circumstances, it was easy for Yuan Changtian to lose his composure. Lin Sun, I thought you were a worthy opponent, but your performance today let me down a little. Yuan Changtian sighed his heart. P.S. Do you still have monthly tickets? If you want to continue tonight. Chapter 2920. After returning to the cave residence, Lin Sun began to meditate in seclusion. As early as a few years ago, he already had the foundation and opportunity to break through the realm. Now he could step into this threshold at any time. After returning yesterday, the reason why he decided to seek the position of deacon today was that he wanted to cultivate in seclusion for a long time after becoming a deacon. When he came out, he would directly seek the position of an elder. But now, Lin Sun changed his mind. Whoosh, taking a deep breath, Lin Sun began to operate his qi. Suddenly, the light of Tao rose from his body and flowed with divine brilliance, reflecting all kinds of unimaginable phenomena of the Great Way. Waves of Tao sounds came out of his body like Sanskrit chanting. For a moment, he was like a god sitting in a sacred place, deriving the mysteries of the Great Way. The nirvana realm allowed one's soul, will, and dharma to achieve an extreme transformation, thereby leading to a change in one's own cultivation. In the heavenly longevity realm, one could only comprehend the power of order and condense their own immortal laws. But in the nirvana realm, one could directly refine the power of order into a part of one's own immortal laws. For example, the heavenly longevity realm could only comprehend the mystery of the power of order and condense the immortal laws with their own great way. But for the nirvana realm, they could directly refine the power of order and integrate it into their own immortal laws. This was the horror of the nirvana realm. Especially in battle, it was almost difficult for some heavenly longevity realm practitioners to suppress the nirvana realm, even if they borrowed the power of order. The reason was that the immortal laws of the nirvana realm practitioners were originally integrated with the power of order, so they were naturally unafraid of such suppression. Moreover, the higher the level of the power of order refined by the nirvana realm practitioners, the more terrifying the power released in battle would be. This was essentially different from the immortal laws of the heavenly longevity realm practitioners. Boom, boom, soon. Lin Sun's body was like a furnace of the Great Way, resounding with Tao sounds. The Tao light and divine brilliance all over his body seemed to be boiling, faintly about to burst out. If it weren't for the fact that the blessed enclave was covered with the power of order of the Yuan sect and was covered with layers of restrictions, such a movement would probably cause a vast phenomenon of heaven and earth. A few days later, Lin Sun, who was meditating, had a thought. A crystal-clear pill, like a small sun, swept out and was swallowed by him. Nirvana Myriad Transformation Pill. It was refined from a rare, 9th-grade heaven rank medicine spirit order, and it could only be refined once every 10,000 years. Consuming this pill was sufficient to increase one's chances of breaking through to the rebirth god realm by 50%. Moreover, it possessed an unbelievable effect towards tempering one's cultivation in the rebirth god realm. If one wanted to obtain this pill, they would need the agreement of all 3 pavilion masters. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to obtain such a treasure, no matter how many contributions one made. This nirvana elixir was Lin's reward after the 9 Peaks discussion. He naturally didn't care about the effects of this pill when he broke through, but he cared about the miraculous effects of this pill in refining the nirvana God Realm Tao foundation. Boom! As soon as he swallowed the elixir, Lin Sun felt that his soul, state of mind and body were all burning with raging fire. He felt that he was being refined in a furnace. He held his breath and concentrated on refining with all his might. For a time, the cave was full of treasure light and roaring divine light. Lin Sun's figure was submerged in it, until 7 days later. Boom! There was a sudden loud noise in the cave where Lin Sun was, just like the beginning of chaos. The boiling power of the Great Way raged and spread, shaking the restriction power in the cave violently. This movement lasted for a full quarter of an hour. Then, in the place where Lin Sun sat cross-legged and meditated, an obscure and deep abyssal whirlpool appeared. When it rotated slowly, the divine light and Taoist light that were like stormy waves were swallowed up like clay oxen falling into the sea, leaving nothing behind. And Lin Sun's tall figure also appeared. In the place behind him, the immortal divine ring emerged, which was round and wonderful. In the center of the divine ring, there was a mighty Dharma form of willpower sitting in it. It swallowed clouds and breathed in the wind and thunder, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains and rivers, and all the things of the world. All the manifestations in the world were lingering around the Dharma form of willpower looming. In a trance, the immortal divine ring was like a universe, and the Dharma form of willpower was the only supreme master in it. Peerlessly surging energy of the grand Tao surged on Lin Sun's body, and it carried a mysterious and profound rhythm. His skin that seemed as if it was made from divine gold and divine jade was suffused with a crystalline and translucent glow. His skin, tendons, bones, and blood emanated terrifying fluctuations of vitality, and even his hair was suffused with a divine glow. And inside his body, it was like a Zhou Su world full of chaos. The torrent of the Great Way was roaring like the Yangtze River, scouring the meridians, acupoints, viscera, and the mysterious track was just like the rule power of a Zhou Su world operating and evolving. Compared with the changes of Taoist body and cultivation, the transformation of the Dharma form of willpower in the sea of consciousness was even more amazing. In his sea of consciousness, which was originally extremely vast and empty, there were billions of divine lights circulating, bright and bright. A Dharma form that looked like a cauldron was suppressing it, vaguely showing an eternal and indestructible might. The surging power of the divine soul around the Dharma form of willpower evolved into all kinds of Great Way laws, which crisscrossed like divine chains, extremely spectacular. This was a nirvana realm. The immortal divine ring and Dharma form were born, and the will of the sea of consciousness was naturally formed. The immortal divine ring of heavenly longevity realm did not have the Dharma form of willpower, and the divine soul Dharma form in the sea of consciousness could not manifest the power of the Great Way. Nirvana realm. Feeling the earth-shaking transformation of his cultivation, Lin Sun was neither sad nor happy. He was extremely calm. There were no twists and turns, no accidents. Everything came naturally, so he was naturally not too excited. Originally, all of this could have happened a few years ago, but now it was not too late. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to abandon these thoughts and sink into meditation again. He began to familiarize himself with and consolidate the power of the new realm. 1 month later, early in the morning, Zhongli Zhe, who was meditating in the cave residence, suddenly opened his eyes. He opened the restriction of the cave residence and suddenly heard a voice. Deacon, Deputy Deacon Lin Sun has issued a challenge to you in Yuanqing Pavilion. If you accept the challenge, Deputy Pavilion Head Fong Daoping invites you to Yuanqing Pavilion now. Zhongli Zhe was stunned. Lin Sun still didn't give up? Come back in an hour, Zhongli Zhe said after thinking for a while. Yes. The disciple outside the cave residence took the order and left. Zhongli Zhe got up and left the cave residence. Not long after, in the blessed place where Fu Wenli was, Zhongli Zhe told Fu Wenli about Lin Sun's challenge. Fu Wenli was also startled. This kid actually has such guts? Zhongli Zhe said, it's obvious that he's not resigned to his previous defeat. Fu Wenli thought for a moment and laughed. I'm not worried that you will lose. Instead, I'm worried that if the news spreads out, it will be bad for your reputation. After all, you are the first deacon of Yuan Sky Pavilion and have the cultivation of the Nirvana realm. If you fight, it is likely that people will suspect that you deliberately bullied Lin Sun. Zhongli Zhe also laughed and said, since he wants to be beaten up, I don't mind fulfilling his wish. Fu Wenli pondered and said, he is not a rash person. Since he dares to challenge, he must have a certain degree of confidence. If you accept the challenge, you should be careful of his talent, the Blade of Time. Once you are hit, your cultivation will be cut off. Zhongli Zhe's eyes suddenly shrank, and then he said with a smile, don't worry, Vice Pavilion Head. I have my own means to avoid the attack of the Blade of Time. Well, you go first. I will also go to watch the battle in person later to cheer for you. Fu Wenli said. Yes. Zhongli Zhe turned around and left. Vice Deacon Lin has issued another challenge to be promoted to the position of deacon. Deacon Zhongli Zhe of Yuan Sky Pavilion has set out to accept the challenge. The news spread very quickly in the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of Yuan sect, causing a great uproar. Is Lin Sun crazy? He is only in the heavenly longevity realm. How can he challenge Zhongli Zhe, who is in the Nirvana realm? Not only were the descendants surprised, but even some of the big shots of the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks were shocked. Isn't this exactly what the enemy wants? Zhongli Zhe can't wait for this day to come. Some of the big shots who had a good impression of Lin Sun couldn't help but feel distressed. Quick, go to Yuan Sky Pavilion. The gap in cultivation is so huge. I have never seen such a battle since ancient times. I just don't know where Vice Deacon Lin gets the confidence to do this. Cut the crap, let's go. Everyone in the Yuan sect, whether they were the big shots or the descendants, stopped what they were doing and rushed to Yuan Sky Pavilion. Such a battle was indeed rare. A heavenly longevity realm cultivator challenging a nirvana realm cultivator in the nirvana realm was simply shocking. It was rarely seen since ancient times. It's only been a month, and he's already so impatient. Yuan Changtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the news. He found it hard to believe. The more he acts like this, the more it proves that he's not worthy of being young master's enemy. Yuan, she said disdainfully. No, I don't think Lin Sun will be so reckless. Yuan Changtian pondered. Old ancestor, please accompany me to have a look. Although I've met him once, I've never seen his strength. I can take this opportunity to observe him. Okay. Yuan, she nodded in agreement. At the same time, in Yuan Sky Pavilion. Zhongli, Zhe has accepted your challenge. I plan to arrange this battle in the Heavens Evolution Dojo. Fong Daoping pondered. It's up to you, senior, Lin Sun said casually. Fong Daoping glanced at Lin Sun and couldn't help saying, Are you still not going to tell me the truth? A month ago, Lin Sun, who had been repeatedly refused, said he would challenge Zhongli Zhe again in a month. Now, Zhongli Zhe had accepted the challenge, but Fong Daoping didn't know where Lin Sun's confidence came from. Senior, let me keep you in suspense. You'll know when the battle begins. Lin Sun said with a smile. You. Fong Daoping shook his head helplessly. Let's go to the Heavens Evolution Dojo. P.S. Thank you, everyone, for your monthly votes. I will send them to you as soon as possible. Chapter 29-21. The Skyflow Dojo. There were people everywhere. There were big shots from the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of the Yuan Church, but there were even more disciples and successors of the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks. The scene was lively, and whispers could be heard continuously. From time to time, many people would look at the center of the Skyflow Dojo and see an imposing figure standing there. He wore an official robe, and his skin was faintly golden. He stood tall with his hands behind his back. Zhongli Zhe. He was ranked first among the 12 deacons of the Origin Pavilion, and he was a nirvana god at the Great Perfection stage. In the outside world, a person like him could already support an immortal emperor clan. Even in the Yuan world, Zhongli Zhe's status was equivalent to that of the 9 Peak Masters, and he could already be considered a big shot. At this moment, Zhongli Zhe's expression was calm. He looked down and completely ignored the gazes from the surroundings. He knew that many people would definitely look down on him and think that his acceptance of Lin Sun's challenge was no different from bullying the weak. But he didn't care. At the end of the day, Lin Sun was the one who issued the challenge. His acceptance of the challenge wouldn't affect his reputation much. On the contrary, what Zhongli Zhe wanted to do the most was to use this opportunity to brutally beat Lin Sun up. Over the years, Lin Sun's reputation had risen, and his every move affected the hearts of the Yuan Church. If such a peerless figure was trampled under his feet today, it would definitely be interesting, right? Thinking of this, Zhongli Zhe felt a little excited in his heart. There was a commotion in the crowd in the distance, followed by a clamor. Lin Sun is here. Sigh. I really don't know what he's thinking. Why would he challenge Deacon Zhongli just so rashly? If he's defeated, his spirit of the great Tao will be destroyed. How do you know that Vice Deacon Lin will lose? Since when can someone at the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm defeat someone at the great perfection of the nirvana god realm? Since ancient times, such a thing has never happened in the entire eternal world. Amidst the discussion, Lin Sun and Fong Daoping's voices had already reached the Skyflow Dojo, and Lin Sun instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. Most people had complicated expressions. They didn't understand why Lin Sun would do such a rash thing. Some people were full of expectations, thinking that Lin Sun must have the confidence to do so. Lin Sun glanced around and saw Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, and other deputy pavilion heads, as well as Xian Failing, Duge Yong, and others. But when his gaze swept past a corner, he couldn't help but be stunned, and he said, Isn't Deacon Mu Qin in closed-door cultivation? You actually have the time to come and join in the fun today? Everyone followed his gaze and saw the attendant of Origin Pavilion, Muchin. They could not help but reveal some disdain. A month ago, the first opponent Lin Sun wanted to challenge was Muchin. However, this Nirvana Realm cultivator avoided the challenge and claimed that he was in closed-door training. But now he had come to watch the show. How could others not look down on him? Humph. Muchin's expression turned gloomy. I don't think I need to ask Deputy Deacon Lin when I come out of seclusion, right? Of course. Lin Sun nodded. If Deacon Muchin doesn't mind, I'd like to take this opportunity to learn from you. But I don't know whether Deacon Muchin will avoid this time. An uproar broke out. No one had expected that Lin Sun would dare to make trouble at this time. Muchin was also stunned, and an unspeakable anger surged in his heart. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was provoked like this. If he didn't agree, how could he establish himself in the sect in the future? However, before he could speak, Zhonglizhe, who had been waiting in the Heavens Evolution Dojo for a long time, said indifferently, Deputy Deacon Lin, your opponent in this assessment is me, not the others present. His voice spread throughout the whole dojo. Don't worry, you'll definitely be the first, Lin Sun said with a smile. A month ago, many deacons couldn't accept my challenge because they had various things to deal with, which made me feel quite regretful. So I want to take this opportunity to learn from these deacons so that I don't have to worry about this matter anymore. Everyone present had a strange look on their faces. Did he think he would be Zhonglizhe's opponent? Cut the crap. Let's fight. In the Heavens Evolution Dojo, Zhonglizhe was impatient. Can't you be more straightforward? Lin Sun, today is the assessment for your promotion to deacon. It's of great importance. Don't waste everyone's time. In the distance, Fu Wenli, the deputy pavilion master, spoke coldly. He was sick of Lin Sun's previous actions. Deputy Pavilion Master Fu is right. I really can't waste too much time. Lin Sun flashed happily and floated to the Heavens Evolution Dojo. The noisy atmosphere suddenly became silent, and all eyes fell on Lin Sun and Zhonglizhe. Deputy Deacon Lin, this is an assessment. Although there's a huge gap between our realms, once the battle starts, I won't show any mercy. When you lose, you'd better not blame me for bullying you, Zhonglizhe said coldly. Of course. Lin Sun nodded. Boom! Zhonglizhe stopped talking nonsense, and his power suddenly changed. A golden immortal halo emerged, and a Dharma idol oval sat in it, shining brightly. The aura belonging to the Nirvana realm's great perfection spread out. Many people's expressions changed, and their hearts sank. How could Lin Sun compete with such power? Rise. Zhonglizhe's eyes were like swords as he spat out a word. Clang! A black spear appeared, and Zhonglizhe grabbed it. His figure tore through the void, and like a bolt of lightning, he thrust the black spear out. It was too fast. The moment he attacked, it was a thunderous blow, and he didn't show any mercy at all. Many Nirvana Realm cultivators couldn't help but shiver when they saw this scene. They felt a great threat and pressure. Not to mention Heavenly Longevity Realm experts. Even Heavenly Longevity Realm experts like them would have to go all out in order to deal with such a slaughter. How could Lin Sun resist it? Everyone's eyes looked at Lin Sun in unison. To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun didn't dodge, nor did he retreat. Instead, he charged forward. Many people had the same thought in their minds. A mantis trying to stop a chariot is like hitting a rock with an egg. Wasn't it like a mantis trying to stop a chariot with such a huge gap in their realms? Clang! The black spear and Lin Sun's fist energy collided, and the entire Heavenly Evolution Dojo shook violently. Then, a violent torrent of destruction spread out from the collision. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. But the scene of Lin Sun being defeated in one move didn't happen, and his figure didn't even shake. On the contrary, the black spear in Zhonglizhe's hand was trembling violently. His expression changed slightly, as if he realized something. But before he could react, Lin Sun struck out thousands of fist energy in an instant. Every fist energy was like a chaotic furnace smashing down, intending to incinerate everything in the world. When hundreds and thousands of heavy punches blasted out like a storm, the scene caused Zhonglizhe to be somewhat dumbfounded. Was this the combat strength that a heavenly longevity realm cultivator could possess? However, he was in existence at the Nirvana realm after all, so he attacked immediately. The black spear in his hand swung and swept out. It was a simple move, but it set off endless black lightning. It was as violent as a hurricane, and it wreaked havoc like a vast ocean. The thick power of law interweaved, making this attack seem exceptionally overbearing. Rumble. The thousands of fist energy were swept away. A burst of exclamations came from outside the arena. Just as Lin Sun was about to be hit by the black spear, a sword cauldron rushed out in front of him with a roar and smashed down with billions of rays of light. The world was suddenly thrown into chaos. As the sword cauldron smashed down, Zhonglizhe's black spear suddenly bent into a huge arc, as if it was about to break. Zhonglizhe's figure was shaken by the impact, and his face was pale. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The power of the Nirvana realm. He shouted, looking shocked and angry. He felt like he had been deceived. He had always thought that Lin Sun was at the heavenly longevity realm. Who would have thought that in just a month, Lin Sun had already broken through and entered the Nirvana realm? The arena was also in an uproar. The power Lin Sun displayed in this attack was indeed not something that a heavenly longevity realm cultivator could possess. This undoubtedly proved that he was already a Nirvana realm cultivator. A Nirvana realm cultivator with the potential of an immortal supreme. No wonder Deputy Deacon Lin is so fearless. It turns out that he has already broken through. There's going to be a good show to watch. It was unknown how many people were excited. That despicable thing. Those experts who hated Lin Sun couldn't help but curse in their hearts. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would break through in just a month. Haha, I knew it. Fong Daoping twirled his beard and laughed. He had some doubts before and guessed that Lin Sun had broken through. However, Lin Sun's aura was obscure and he couldn't identify it. But now he was finally sure. I knew this kid wasn't a reckless person. It turns out that he has broken through. Yuan Changtian stood in the distance with his hands behind his back. His handsome face revealed a look of relief, and he said with interest, "In this case, there are many more variables in this battle." There was still a huge difference between a Nirvana realm cultivator who had just broken through and a heavenly longevity realm cultivator who had reached the heavenly longevity realm. For Yuan Changtian, Lin Sun's cultivation was still at a disadvantage. While the arena was in an uproar, Lin Sun and Zhonglizhe were already fighting fiercely in the Heavenly Evolution Dojo. Boom! Lin Sun was still barehanded, but his power was completely different from before. He was strong and disdainful, and every punch he threw was like a god lifting an ancient divine mountain and smashing it down. After the initial shock, Zhonglizhe had calmed down and fought calmly. The black spear he wielded displayed endless mysterious power. After all, he was the #1 deacon of the Sky Origin Pavilion. Moreover, he had mastered extremely powerful secret techniques and talent. When he went all out in battle, the power he displayed was extraordinary. But as time passed, Zhonglizhe's expression gradually turned serious, and his eyes occasionally flashed with surprise. He had already used his full strength, but he still couldn't suppress Lin Sun. Instead, he began to feel pressured. However, Zhonglizhe remained calm from beginning to end, and his state of mind was firm. A person like him wouldn't let such an unforeseen event affect his fighting spirit. P.S. The second round came a little later. Chapter 29-22. Boom! On the battlefield, Zhonglizhe seized the opportunity to display his innate talent. Endless evil fire. On the black spear, a gray line of fire spread. When it reached the tip of the spear, it suddenly exploded and turned into hundreds of millions of sparks. Exclamations sounded in the field. This strike was dazzling and extremely dangerous. The Nirvana realm cultivators couldn't help but feel terrified. The abyssal sword cauldron rotated and blocked in front of Lin Sun. Countless sparks flew towards Lin Sun, but they were all wiped out by the sword cauldron. Clang! Even the black spear was blocked by the abyssal sword cauldron, unable to move it at all. Zhonglija narrowed his eyes slightly. Without any delay, he displayed his trump card again. Boundless Flame. His body shone brightly like a burning sun. The black spear in his hand was bathed in dazzling light, and the nearby void twisted and collapsed violently as if it was incinerated. When this strike was launched, the entire Skyflow dojo was dazzled as if it was drowned in light. Boom! However, along with a rumble, the boundless flames seemed as if they'd been torn apart, and they were forcefully crushed and dispersed by the sword cauldron. And in the sword cauldron, a Taoist sword slashed out. Clang! Zhonglija blocked with the black spear, but his arms were hit by the Taoist sword. His whole body seemed to be flipped over and shot back. Everyone outside the field was shocked. By now, the two had exchanged thousands of blows, but Zhonglija, who was at the peak of the Nirvana realm, didn't gain any advantage. His attacks were continuously thwarted. In the distance, the eyes of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and other big shots flickered, and there was a haze between their eyebrows. Zhonglija's performance didn't let them down. The power he used was commendable in this realm, but it was a little inferior to Lin Sun's. In fact, in the eyes of Fu Wenli and the others, Lin Sun, who had just broken through to the Nirvana realm, was undoubtedly too dazzling. His combat power was simply heaven-defying, and they found it hard to believe. As a result, even if Zhonglija tried his best, he couldn't overshadow Lin Sun's brilliance, let alone suppress him. On the battlefield, the battle became more and more intense. Thousand Flames, Burning Heart Flame, Calamity Fire's End. Zhonglija's imposing aura was terrifying as he utilized all his trump cards and displayed his cultivation to the limit, causing the spectators outside the battlefield to shudder with fear. Everyone could see that Zhonglija was putting his life on the line and was no longer holding back. However, what was more shocking was that Lin Sun resisted and resolved all of Zhonglija's killing moves one by one. Lin Sun couldn't hurt him at all. At this moment, even Zhonglija's expression was as solemn as water, filled with shock and anger. There was such a huge gap between their realms, but he couldn't do anything to the other party. If he lost, it would be a small matter to lose face, but losing his decomposition was something that Zhonglija couldn't bear. You can't. At this time, Lin Sun said indifferently, "At best, it's just a whetstone on my way to Nirvana God." Whoosh! His aura suddenly changed as he charged forward with the sword cauldron. Boom! When the sword cauldron struck horizontally, Zhonglija immediately coughed up blood from the impact, and his figure swayed. He had tried his best to resist, but in such a head-on collision, he was injured. What made Zhonglija even more intolerable was that Lin Sun regarded him, a Nirvana god in full mastery, as a whetstone. Go! A cold light flashed in Zhonglija's eyes, and he opened his mouth to spit. Whoosh! A 3-inch-long dark blue flying knife burst out, came to Lin Sun's head like a ghost, and suddenly chopped down. The speed was so fast that most people outside the field had no time to react. But Lin Sun's reaction was extremely fast. A Taoist sword whizzed out of the sword cauldron and blocked the dark blue flying knife at the critical moment. Clang! The dark blue flying knife shook violently and flew out backward. Zhonglija coughed up another mouthful of blood. That was the natal flying knife he had cultivated in his body, and it was also his most powerful trump card. But now it was so easily blocked. Outside the field, the faces of Fu Wenli and other big shots had become gloomy. How could they not see that it was almost impossible for Zhonglija to turn the situation around? More people were shocked by Lin Sun's combat power. It was too strong. He didn't look like a person who had just broken through the realm of Nirvana spirit at all. Otherwise, how could Zhonglija, who was at the great completion of Nirvana spirit realm, be continuously injured? Kill! Zhonglija shouted. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were red, as if he was desperate. If he was defeated by Lin Sun today, there was only one result waiting for him: losing his position as a deacon and losing his face. He would never be able to raise his head in the sect again. When he first learned of Lin Sun's challenge, he was quite excited and planned to take advantage of this opportunity to beat Lin Sun. Boom! On the battlefield, Zhongli's momentum became more and more terrible. His spears swept across the sky and the earth. Wherever it passed, the earth trembled and the void was in disorder. It was extremely terrible. However, Lin Sun had already figured out Zhongli's strength, so he didn't intend to fight with him anymore. His figure suddenly stretched out, and the sword cauldron moved horizontally, crushing the void and smashing down. Clang! In the earth-shattering explosion, Zhongli's spear flew out of his hand, and his whole body was smashed to the ground. His body was broken, and he was almost smashed into a meat pie. But this wasn't the end. At the same time that Zhongli was suppressed, Lin Sun had already teleported over, and he stretched out his hand to grab Zhongli's broken body. "You're not allowed to kill." Fu Wenli's shout resounded in the distance. On the other hand, Qi Xiaoyan, Qi Wen, and the other important figures were all furious. Zhongli had lost too quickly and too miserably, and his body was almost destroyed. They were unable to accept such an outcome. In the Heaven Flow Dojo, Lin Sun casually tossed Zhongli out and said indifferently, "I naturally know that killing is prohibited in the Heaven Flow Dojo." Bang! Zhongli tumbled to the ground and fell unconscious. Outside the Heaven Flow Dojo, the crowd was in an uproar. "Good job, Vice Deacon Lin. From today onward, you should be called Deacon Lin. Awesome. He's at the early stage of Nirvana realm, and he's able to surmount the middle, late, and perfect stages and suppress his opponent in one go. Such heaven-defying combat strength is truly rare since ancient times, and it's sufficient to shock the ancients and dazzle the contemporaries." Excited shouts rose and fell, and many people in the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of the Yuan sect looked at Lin Sun with bright and fanatical eyes. From the very beginning of this battle, many people were worried that Lin Sun would lose. But now, people realized that for a person like Lin Sun who defied the natural order, he probably had enough confidence to win. So he dared a challenge like this. Not bad at all. Fang Daoping, Xin Feiling, Du Guiyong, and the other big shots all laughed, especially when they saw the ugly expressions of Fu Wenli and the others. In recent years, watching Fu Wenli and the others suffer and be embarrassed had become a habit of Xin Feiling and the others, and this habit was cultivated through the battle since Lin Sun entered the sect. Very good. Congratulations, Lin Sun. From today on, you're a deacon of the Yuankong Pavilion. In the distance, Fang Daoping laughed loudly. Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Someone cupped his hands and said. Then, many descendants present cupped their hands and said in unison, Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Their voices resounded through the sky. Everyone's expression was filled with awe, fanaticism, and excitement. For them, Lin Sun was like a legend. Since he joined the sect to the present, his deeds had long been deeply rooted in their hearts. At this time, those enemies who hated Lin Sun looked very uncomfortable, as if they had swallowed flies. Deacon, this was the existence who could be on an equal footing with the 9 peak masters. Who would have thought that Lin Sun, who had only been in the sect for about 10 years, had already climbed to this position? Not bad at all. I underestimated him before. Yuan Changtian clapped his hands and praised. Young Lord, isn't it a little too much to praise others and belittle our own? Yuan Shilio whispered. Yuan Changtian laughed and said, Old ancestor, jealousy is the weapon of the incompetent. Appreciation is the greatest respect for the enemy. Yuan Shilio said with relief, Young Lord, your cultivation is getting better and better. At this time, Lin Sun glanced around. Seeing the excitement and respect on the faces of most people present, Lin Sun was also pleased. The will of the people and the prestige of the people. Now, he had won the approval and support of most people in Yuan school, which was naturally a happy thing. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring Zhongli out. Seeing Lin Sun being supported, Fu Wenli became more and more uncomfortable and shouted in a deep voice. There was a moment of silence. Only then did people realize that Zhongli Zhe, who was defeated by Lin Sun, was still in a coma in the Tianyang dojo. Immediately, someone rushed in, but when he was about to help Zhongli Zhe, who was in a coma, suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Lin Sun, how dare you destroy my cultivation? I will not live under the same sky with you." His voice was full of anger and resentment. Then he suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood. His figure swayed, and he fainted again. It was visible to the naked eye that his appearance had returned to that of a teenager, but the aura around him had weakened to the lowest point. Seeing this, all the people present fell into a dead silence. Everyone was shocked by this scene and couldn't believe it. Even Fong Daoping, Xian Failing, and others narrowed their eyes, feeling unprepared. Who would have thought that Lin Sun had already cut off Zhongli-Zhe's cultivation silently? This was horrifying. Fu Wenli was furious. With killing intent in his eyes, he pointed at Lin Sun from a distance and said, "Bastard, how dare you kill your fellow apprentice in the assessment of the sect? You can't be forgiven." Before his voice died away, he had raised his hand and slapped Lin Sun fiercely across the air. Boom! The dazzling and blazing power of law intertwined and turned into a huge and terrible hand. But it was blocked by Xian Failing before it could reach Lin Sun. "Brother Fu, as the deputy head of the sect, how can you suppress the successor of the sect at will?" Xian Failing said coldly. "You have seen with your own eyes how despicable this man is. He not only defeated Zhongli Zhe, but also destroyed his cultivation. This is a heinous crime." Fu Wenli's face was livid. Qi Xiaoyan, Qi Wen, Tang Xiu, and other big shots who hated Lin Sun also seemed to be irritated at this moment. The atmosphere around the Tianyang dojo became oppressive and tense. P.S. I will adjust on the weekend and continue to update tomorrow. Chapter 29-23. A man at the peak of Nirvana realm had his cultivation cut off. This was naturally an extremely serious and vile thing. What's more, Zhongli Zhe was not an ordinary person. He ranked first among the 12 deacons of Yuankong Pavilion, and his status was even higher than that of the 9 peak masters. He could be regarded as a heavyweight of Yuan's sect. Moreover, his surname was Zhongli, and he was supported by the Zhongli family of the 8th heaven. Just like that, a great figure with status, cultivation, and background had his cultivation severed today. This was more cruel than killing him. Therefore, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyan, Qi Wen, and Tang Xiu were so angry. When sparring and discussing the Tao, how can there be no injuries? In the oppressive and tense atmosphere, Du Guiyong said calmly, "All of you have seen this assessment. From beginning to end, Lin Sun did not kill anyone. According to the rules of the sect, as long as no one is killed, it is not a violation of the criminal law." "Ridiculous," Fu Wenli said angrily. "What's the difference between his cultivation and killing? I know you want to protect Lin Sun, but if you don't punish him for what happened today, I won't let it go." Yes, this is too bad. If everyone imitates Lin Sun in the future and destroys his opponent's cultivation in the competition, won't it be a mess? Qi Xiaoyan also said coldly, "Yes, we must punish him severely." Qi Wen, Tang Xiu, and other big shots who hated Lin Sun all spoke at this moment to punish Lin Sun severely, otherwise they would not let it go. This made everyone present tremble with fear. The development of the situation was completely beyond people's expectation. Even they did not expect that Lin Sun would be so ruthless. Lin Sun, who had become the target of public criticism, looked as calm as ever and said indifferently, "May I ask Deputy Pavilion Leader Xian, according to the rules of the sect, did I make any mistakes?" "No," Xian Failing said indifferently. "If you violated the rules, I would have taken you down at the first time before others criticized you. All of you here are also proficient in the rules of the sect, so you should naturally know that in such an assessment, as long as no one is killed, there is no crime." Everyone nodded their heads in agreement when they heard this. In the past, extremely horrifying and fierce battles would frequently occur during the promotion tests. Both parties to the battle were unwilling to have their positions replaced by another, and it was to the extent that when a victor was determined, there would usually be situations where one party was heavily injured and on the verge of death. There were also many examples of their Tao bodies being destroyed and their primordial spirits being severely injured. What was more serious was that they were blasted to the point where only a single drop of origin blood was left. Is being seriously injured the same as losing cultivation? Fu Wenli looked cold and gloomy. As I said, I won't stop until I punish Lin Sun today. Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wan, and the rest also expressed their support for Fu Wenli's decision. The atmosphere became even more oppressive, and it was oppressive to the point of suffocation. The atmosphere was so tense that everyone couldn't help but feel anxious. They were worried that this matter would cause those great figures to completely shed all pretenses of cordiality. If that was the case, the primordial spirit sect was destined to have no peace. Ancestor, do you think what Lin Sun did today is a pity? Yuan Changtian sighed softly and asked in a voice transmission. Young master, this old servant only knows that Fu Wenli and the others are doing this to help young master eliminate a potential threat to him. Yuan Shiliu, who was next to him, answered indifferently. Eliminate? That's impossible. At most, he will be punished. Don't you see that there are many people in the primordial spirit sect who support and defend Lin Sun? If it gets out of hand, it will only make the primordial spirit sect more divided. From then on, there will be constant turmoil and disputes. Yuan Changtian said casually. Therefore, the greatest possibility is that Lin Sun will be punished in order to settle this matter. Just as he said this, a golden ray of light suddenly appeared in the sky, and then it transformed into a golden scroll that instantly drew the gazes of everyone present here. It's the order of Lord Yanji. There was a shock in the field. They realized that what happened today had alarmed the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion, who hadn't shown up for a long time. The golden scroll unfolded in the sky, and then a deep voice came out of it. For what happened today, Lin Sun will be grounded in his cave residence for 9 years, and his salary will be deducted for 10 years. From today on, if something similar happens again, no matter who it is, I won't let it go easily. Every word of the voice resounded through the world like thunder, revealing supreme majesty. Everyone was shocked at first, and then their expressions changed. This punishment. For Lin Sun, it was not a serious injury, but a light punishment. Looking at Xian Failing, Du Guiyong, and others, they couldn't help but smile. Lin Sun didn't violate the rules. He just cut off his opponent's cultivation. This punishment was enough. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wan, and other big shots were so angry that they almost vomited blood. How could this be called a punishment? Oh, it seems that the head of Yanji is also very protective of Lin Sun. Yuan Changtian laughed. He had expected this result, but he didn't expect that the punishment would be so light. This is unfair and will only make Fu Wenli and others more resentful. As far as I know, Yanji had a problem with his state of mind when he tried to prove the eternal way, so that only a wisp of his spirit survived until now. Such a person is not qualified to be the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion anymore. Yuan Shiliu transmitted his voice coldly. Only a wisp of his spirit. Yuan Changtian's eyes flashed. I hope so. This is not fair. Qi Wen shouted angrily. The faces of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others were extremely gloomy. They had lost a heavy weight in exchange for such a light punishment. This made them so angry that they wanted to curse out loud. Deputy Qi Wan, are you questioning the decision of the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion? Xian Failing looked at him coldly. Qi Wen's face changed. I just think that such a punishment is not enough to convince the public. I'm not questioning the prestige of Yuan Kong Pavilion. Xian Failing ignored him and looked at the others present. Everyone present, do you think this punishment is reasonable? Of course. It should be so. Deacon Lin has never violated the rules. We all feel aggrieved for him to receive such a punishment. We support the decision of head of Yanji. Most of the people present spoke out one after another, clearly expressing their support for Yanji's decision. Qi Wen was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Fu Wenli. Fu Wenli had calmed down. He looked at Lin Sun in the distance indifferently and said, "Since the head has made a decision, we naturally have no objection. I only hope that Deacon Lin will not hurt your fellow disciples in this way in the future. Otherwise, I will give you a severe punishment even if I have to risk my life." After that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your teachings, Deputy Pavilion Master Fu." Soon, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, Tang Qiu, and others also left one after another. "Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Congratulations, Deacon Lin." At this time, many people present congratulated him again. This time, the deacon was obviously congratulating Lin Sun for not being severely punished. From this, it could be seen that Lin Sun had established his own prestige in the Yuan school and was deeply supported. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to get so many voices of support. "Thank you for your righteous words." Lin Sun also cupped his hands with a smile. "Boy, don't do such a thing next time." Seeing Lin Sun walk out of the Heaven's Evolution Dojo, Fong Daoping couldn't help but glare at him. "Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be so lucky next time. Next, you should listen to Head of Yin Ji and meditate in your cave residence. Don't make any more trouble." Xian Failing couldn't help but warn Lin Sun. "You've seen the situation this time. If it weren't for Head of Yin Ji's words, you would definitely be in serious trouble today." Lin Sun smiled and nodded in agreement. Soon, Xian Failing, Du Guiyong, and others also left one after another. Although today's matter had been settled, these big shots all knew in their hearts that Fu Wenli and others, who bore a grudge, would never let it go. In other words, this matter was tantamount to a falling out between them and Fu Wenli and others. This was very likely to cause a split within the Yuan school, and many discord and turbulence were inevitable. However, this was also what Xian Failing and others wanted to see. Since Lin Sun joined the Yuan school, they had already made up their mind to use Lin Sun to completely clean up the stubborn disease and tumor within the Yuan school. Now, the curtain of this action had just begun. "Lin Sun, Peak Master asked me to tell you that no matter what happens in the future, the Ninth Peak will always stand by your side." Mo Lan Shan, the elder of the Ninth Peak, came and expressed Qin Wuyu's attitude with a smile. Lin Sun was shocked and bowed. "Thank you." Soon, the big shots of the three pavilions and 9 peaks also came to congratulate Lin Sun, such as Xiao Wenyuan, Li Zhen, Sangzhong Xue, the head of the 8th Peak, Tian Wucua, the head of the 7th Peak, Wen Dongmian, the head of the 6th Peak, and Yu Xiangting, the head of the 5th Peak. Lin Sun had become a deacon and replaced the original position of the head of the 12 deacons of the Yuan school. His status could be said to be on the same level as the heads of the 9 peaks. In terms of power, he was even more powerful than them. It could be said that over the years, with the constant changes in cultivation, status, and identity, Lin Sun had further gained the recognition and affirmation of many big shots in the Yuan school. This would naturally be of immeasurable benefit to his actions in the Yuan school in the future. At least, knowing that he and those enemies were like fire and water, he could still get the support of so many people in the Yuan school today, which in itself was the greatest recognition and support for him. "Brother Lin, congratulations on being promoted to the position of deacon today and on resolving a disaster." When Lin Sun was about to leave, there was a hearty laughter. Not far away, he saw Yuan Changtian, accompanied by Yuan Shiliu, walking towards him. Dressed in a snow-white robe, he was handsome and outstanding. At this time, when he walked over, he immediately attracted the attention of many people present.